Chapter 1975. My fate is up to me, not the heavens. Everyone in the surroundings was stunned when they heard this. Yi Xian's face was covered in astonishment as well. That fellow has a temper. Nakayama of Silla shook his head as well. Amazing. Nianji sighed softly with a complicated expression on his face. He didn't know what to say when he encountered such a disciple of the later generations. Suddenly, Xiao Xiao spoke coldly, "Farewell, ancestor." As he spoke, he opened his palm, and a pitch-black command token appeared there. In the next moment, Nianji's soul gradually became ethereal. He was going to put away the obsession soul. Nianji glanced at the experts of the enforcement sect. "What's your choice?" All the experts of the enforcement sect fell silent. Xiao Zhao's face was emotionless. "Martial ancestor, we want to give it a try." Nianji nodded lightly. "I understand." As he spoke, his figure gradually became ethereal. Meanwhile, Nakayama of Silla suddenly said, "Senior, you can kill Xiao Xiao. In that way, you'll be able to save your enforcement sect." Xiao Xiao glanced coldly at Nakayama of Silla while the killing intent in his eyes seemed material. Nianji shook his head and smiled. "I've already perished, so it doesn't matter to me whether the enforcement sect exists or not." Nakayama of Silla spoke in a low voice. "Are you just going to watch as they court death?" Nianji smiled. "That's their choice." As soon as he finished speaking, his soul vanished like smoke. He'd vanished completely. He didn't choose to return to the command token and protect the enforcement sect, because he knew the outcome. Moreover, he was utterly unable to change anything. Even though he was the ancestor of the enforcement sect, this wasn't his era anymore. After all, a new emperor brought his own ministers. So, he chose to leave in peace. After Nianji left, Nakayama of Silla, who stood by Yi Xian's side, suddenly said, "Young brother Yi, should we retreat?" Yi Xian fell silent for a moment before he asked, "Do we have a chance at victory?" Nakayama of Silla transmitted his voice using profound energy. "Is there only one sword light in your sister's hand?" Yi Xian looked at Nakayama of Silla. "How did you know?" Nakayama of Silla said in a low voice, "If she had many daos, would she still be standing here watching Xiao Xiao act tough?" Yi Xian was speechless. Nakayama of Silla said solemnly, "Let's retreat to Daolin Nation." Yi Xian nodded. "I'll listen to Senior." The corners of Nakayama of Silla's mouth twitched. He waved his right hand. "Retreat! Retreat!" With that, the group of people turned around and fled. Meanwhile, a wisp of a ferocious expression flashed through Xiao Zhao's eyes. "You want to retreat?" With that, he waved his hand. "Kill!" As soon as he finished speaking, the experts from the law enforcement sect and the experts from Yunjie rushed out. At this moment, many assassins suddenly appeared in the surroundings. The hidden killer's pavilion brought up the rear. Xiao Xiao opened his palm, and 9 black wooden tablets suddenly floated out. In the next moment, the 9 wooden tablets suddenly exploded, and 9 mysterious people wrapped in black cloths appeared. As soon as the 9 mysterious people appeared, Nakayama of Silla's expression changed drastically. Corpse generals. The law enforcement sect actually refined corpse generals. Yi Xian was slightly curious. "Senior, what are corpse generals?" Nakayama of Silla said in a low voice, "Many years ago, there was a superpower in Daolin Nation called the Corpse God Sect. This sect is extremely skilled in refining corpses." As he spoke, he turned around and glanced at the surroundings. These corpse generals are at least Daolis realm experts. After being refined using a special secret technique, these corpse generals become even more terrifying. Back then, the Corpse God sect refined a large number of corpse generals. At their peak, they had over 1,000 corpse generals. Later on, when my Daolin Nation's ancestor emerged from his closed-door cultivation, he annihilated them. Because the method of refining corpse generals is extremely cruel. For example, the souls of these corpse generals that you see now actually still exist. However, their souls are imprisoned within their corpses. Moreover, they're being controlled by the person who refined them. Yi Xian was about to speak when 6 corpse generals appeared before the 3 of them. Yi Xian noticed that these 3 corpse generals had stopped all the assassins from the Hidden Killer's pavilion. Even the pavilion master of the Hidden Killer's pavilion had been stopped. Yi Xian gazed at Nakayama of Silla. "Senior, how many are you fighting?" Nakayama of Silla raised a finger. Yi Xian hurriedly said, "All of them." All right. Nakayama of Silla was dumbfounded. "Do you not know how to count?" "I'll say 1. Yi Xian's face darkened. "Senior, your cultivation level is so much higher than mine. Aren't you embarrassed to fight 1? Nakayama of Silla nodded. "Of course I am." Yi Xian's expression froze. At this moment, Xiao Xiao and Zhong Shou appeared before Yi Xian's group of 3. Xiao Xiao glanced at Yang Nianxue, who was hiding behind Yi Xian. He had not forgotten the sword gleam in Yang Nianxue's hand. Xiao Xiao said solemnly, "Miss, if you're willing to leave, we won't stop you." Yang Nianxue's eyes lit up. "Really?" Nakayama of Silla and Yi Xian turned to look at Yang Nianxue. Both of their faces were filled with astonishment. Yang Nianxue said seriously, "I'm just asking. I don't mean anything else." Yi Xian and Nakayama of Silla exchanged glances. Both of them were slightly flustered. Nakayama of Silla said softly, "Are you sure she's your biological sister?" Yi Xian fell silent for a moment before he said, "Most of the time, I'm not so sure." Nakayama of Silla was speechless. Meanwhile, Xiao Xiao said, "Miss, if I'm not wrong, there's only 1 sword gleam left in your hand. Am I right?" Yang Nianxue remained silent. Xiao Xiao continued, "That sword gleam of yours is really powerful. We can't stop it. However, you can only kill 1 person, right?" Yang Nianxue's lips curled up slightly. "Then I'll kill you." As soon as she finished speaking, she opened her palm, and a ray of sword gleams suddenly flew out. The ray of sword gleam's target was Xiao Xiao. Xiao Xiao's expression changed drastically. At this moment, he smelled the scent of death. If he were to stop that ray of sword gleam, he would definitely not be able to. Of course, he wouldn't do it himself. A corpse general appeared in front of Xiao Xiao, and then it smashed its fist forward. It was a head-on attack. Hiss. Everyone watched as the corpse general was obliterated. Meanwhile, Xiao Xiao had fled over 30 kilometers away. A trace of fear appeared in Xiao Xiao's eyes for the first time when he saw the terrifying corpse general being obliterated just like that. He knew very well how terrifying the corpse general was. It could be said that even he couldn't do anything to it, because the corpse general's body was at the half-step inactivity realm. However, such a terrifying body had been slashed into pieces like tofu by that ray of sword gleam. That ray of sword gleam was actually so terrifying. A trace of fear arose in Xiao Xiao's heart, but it didn't take long for him to suppress it. At this moment, he had no way out. Xiao Xiao raised his head and looked towards the distance. A moment later, he was stunned. That woman was gone. It wasn't just Xiao Xiao, Yi Xian and Nakayama of Silla were stunned as well. Yang Nianxue had fled right after she shot that ray of sword gleam. She's fled. Yi Xian was quite stunned. That's his own sister. She fled just like that? Blood is thicker than water. Meanwhile, Xiao Xiao gazed at Nakayama of Silla, and he spoke fiercely, "Kill him first." As soon as he finished speaking, 3 corpse generals charged at Nakayama of Silla. Nakayama of Silla's expression changed drastically. "Are you fucking mad?" Xiao Xiao stared fixedly at Nakayama of Silla. "I fucking hated the sight of you for a very long time." Compared to Yi Xian, he actually hated Nakayama of Silla even more. He felt that it was normal for Yi Xian to be shameless. After all, Yi Xian's strength was low, and he was like a child. So, it was understandable for him to be shameless. But who was Nakayama of Silla? he was at the Taoist realm. However, he was so shameless and always spoke sarcastic words. He hated it. Xiao Xiao attacked Nakayama of Silla first. Meanwhile, Yi Xian heaved a sigh of relief in his heart. But it didn't take long for his expression to turn gloomy. Because there were 2 corpse generals in front of him. Moreover, Zhong Shou and Xiao Xiaoyi were staring at him. Their main target was still him. Yi Xian glanced at Yan Bianshan, who was in Xiao Ta. At this moment, Yan Bianshan was like an old monk in meditation, and he didn't move at all. I can't count on him at all. Xiao Xiao suddenly said, "Kill." As soon as he finished speaking, the 2 corpse generals by his side charged at Yi Xian. A vicious expression flashed through Yi Xian's eyes. He opened his palm, and the green profound sword suddenly flew out. Bang! A ray of light slashed against the corpse general in the lead, and the green profound sword was blasted away. However, a deep gash was left behind on the corpse general's body. Xiao Zhao's face instantly fell when he witnessed this scene. That sword was actually able to damage the corpse general's body. Meanwhile, the 3 corpse generals had charged over to Yi Xian. Yi Xian issued a command in his heart, and a sword and shield appeared in front of him. Bang! 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 The sword and shield shook violently, and then Yi Xian was blasted over 10 kilometers away. At the instant that his figure stopped, the sword and shield in front of him suddenly transformed into a ray of light that slashed forward. Bang! The corpse general that charged towards him was instantly stopped on the spot by the ray of light. But right at this moment, a fist suddenly appeared on Yi Xian's right, and it headed straight for his head with the intention of shattering his head. Yi Xian stomped his right foot on the ground and activated the sword domain. An expanse of light enveloped him and the corpse general. However, the light was instantly shattered as soon as it appeared. Bang! As soon as the light was shattered, Yi Xian's figure was blasted over 10 kilometers away. He just stopped when a terrifying force swept towards him. Yi Xian's pupils constricted. He issued a command in his heart, and the green profound sword transformed into a shield that blocked in front of him once more. Bang! The shield shook violently, and then an expanse of light erupted. Yi Xian retreated explosively once more. However, while he was retreating, a corpse general had suddenly appeared in front of him, and then it smashed its fist towards Yi Xian's face. It hadn't utilized any spatial energy, and it was just the purest form of strength. Such strength might not pose much of a threat to an ordinary person. After all, that person could rely on spatial energy to resist it. However, such pure strength was extremely threatening to Yi Xian. At this critical moment, Yi Xian sensed the aura of death once more. Death. He hadn't sensed such an aura in a very long time. At this instant, Yi Xian suddenly started laughing. As soon as he started laughing, the blood within his body suddenly started seething. In an instant, his entire body was covered in blood. In the next moment, the entire sky had turned blood red like an ocean of blood, and it was extremely bloody. The energy of his bloodline. After a very long time, he'd activated his bloodline once more. As the power of the bloodline was activated, an extremely terrifying aura swept out from the field. P.S. Please vote. Chapter 1976. At the instant his bloodline energy was activated, Yi Xian issued a command in his heart, and a ray of blood-red light slashed through the battlefield. Bang! In front of Yi Xian, the corpse general was sent flying thousands of feet away. When the corpse general came to a stop, its body split open. Xiao Xiao and the others had unsightly expressions on their faces when they witnessed this scene. They hadn't imagined that Yi Xian would actually have more trump cards. Bloodline energy. What sort of bloodline energy is that? It's actually able to improve Yi Xian's strength by so much. Xiao Xiao turned around to gaze at Zhong Shou with a gloomy expression. Are you still holding back at a time like this? Xiao Xiao had utilized practically all his trump cards up until this point. Yet now, Yun Jia was still holding back. This caused him to be extremely displeased. Zhong Shou fell silent. Actually, he'd had the intention to retreat since the very beginning. Because even the founding ancestor of the enforcement sect didn't dare offend this fellow. However, he knew that he and Yunjie had no way out now. If he retreated and allowed Yi Xian to mature or Yan Bianshan to attain the inaction realm, then both his and Yunjie's lives would be at Yunjie's mercy. Xiao Xiao spoke indifferently. What? Do you think you still have a way out now? The hesitation in Zhong Shou's eyes vanished when he heard this. He opened his palm, and a strand of green smoke floated up into the air. In the next moment, the space and the surroundings started trembling violently, and it didn't take long for 12 white-robed old men to walk out from the surroundings. Xiao Zhao's eyes narrowed slightly. Divine General Yun. Divine General Yun. This was a mysterious team that ancestor Yun Jia had established all those years ago. Supposedly, there were 36 of them, and 9 of them were even at the half-step inaction realm. Following which, along with the fall of the Cloud World ancestor, this mysterious team also disappeared. Yet now, they'd appeared once more. Even though there were only 12 of them, all 12 of them were at the peak of the Daoless realm. These were all veteran Daoless realm powerhouses. Be it their combat strength or their foundation, they were all top-notch. Along with the appearance of these 12 people, the situation had undergone a tremendous change. Crushing. In terms of lineups and numbers, Yun Jia and the law enforcement sect had completely crushed Yi Xian's side. On the other side, Nakayama of Silla and the Hidden Killer Pavilion Master's faces darkened. Based on the current lineup, the Hidden Killer's Pavilion and the Zhonglin Dao Nation had been completely crushed. This was especially so for the Hidden Killer Pavilion's Pavilion Master. He felt a headache coming on. His people were all assassins, and they were not good at fighting head-on. Up until now, he had already lost many assassins. If they continued fighting like this, they would all be wiped out. At this moment, Zhong Shou suddenly looked at Yi Xian from afar. Kill! Kill! As soon as he finished speaking, the 12 divine generals charged at Yi Xian, and then over a dozen formidable auras swept through the surroundings like a tidal wave. For a time, space throughout the heavens and the earth had become illusory. Yi Xian, who'd activated his bloodline, frowned. At this moment, he still had a trace of consciousness. His face fell when he saw the 12 Daoless realm experts charge at him. Damn it. These old fellows don't care about martial virtue. They're actually ganging up on me. I have no choice but to go all out. Yi Xian was just about to attack when the space around him suddenly trembled. A moment later, 9 experts in golden armor suddenly appeared around Yi Xian. The Imperial Guard of the Lindao Nation. Meanwhile, Nakayama of Silla, who was being pressed down by 3 corpse generals, spoke abruptly. Little fellow, retreat for now and head to my Lindao Nation. Yi Xian hesitated for a moment and said, Senior, will you cover our retreat? Nakayama of Silla replied, Of course. Yi Xian thought for a moment and said, That's not a good idea, right? Nakayama of Silla spoke angrily, Then you cover our retreat. Yi Xian didn't even look back as he vanished into the distance. Senior, take care. Nakayama of Silla was speechless. A ferocious expression flashed through Xiao Zhao's eyes when he saw Yi Xian flee. Where do you think you're going? As he spoke, he suddenly vanished on the spot. Meanwhile, Yi Xian suddenly turned around and slashed down with his sword. He drew his sword to decide life and death. An expanse of blood-red light shot out like a waterfall. Xiao Zhao's pupils constricted as he charged towards Yi Xian. However, he didn't retreat, and he smashed his fist forward instead. He was going head-on against Yi Xian. He knew how terrifying Yi Xian's sword was, and he would only suffer a worse fate if he retreated. Because Yi Xian's sword was extremely swift. Bang! An expanse of sword light erupted, and Xiao Xiao retreated explosively for thousands of meters. As soon as he stopped moving, a flying sword suddenly slashed towards him. Xiao Xiao dodged to the side and avoided this lethal strike by a hair's breadth. However, his arms suddenly shattered into nothingness when he was about to continue chasing. Xiao Zhao's expression turned unsightly. Go after him. Don't let him escape to the Lindao nation. He didn't know what trump cards the Lindao nation had, but he didn't dare to underestimate them. Because the ancestor of the Lindao nation was Jun Daolin. Zhong Shou and the others rushed out at the first possible moment. Meanwhile, the two corpse generals and divine generals Yun gave up on chasing Nakayama of Silla and chased after Yi Xian. Nakayama of Silla heaved a sigh of relief when he saw this. Fortunately, Yi Xian had fled to attract the enemy's firepower. Otherwise, he might not be able to hold on if this continued. Yi Xian was speechless. Meanwhile, a black-robed figure appeared by Nakayama of Silla's side. It was the pavilion master of the Hidden Killer Pavilion. The pavilion master spoke in a low voice. Nakayama of Silla, aren't you afraid that he'll be killed? Nakayama of Silla spoke softly. How could that be? He won't die even if we die. The pavilion master frowned slightly. Why? Nakayama of Silla spoke indifferently. Because he has someone backing him. The pavilion master was speechless. Nakayama of Silla glanced at the surroundings and said, let's go. We'll wait for him at the Lindao nation. As he spoke, he turned around and left. The pavilion master hesitated for a moment and said, aren't you afraid that he'll be killed? Nakayama of Silla didn't even turn around. We'll make a huge profit if he doesn't die. If he dies, we won't lose out either because the person backing him will definitely avenge him. When the law enforcement sect and Yunjia kill him, it'll be the day they'll be annihilated. At that time, we'll also make a profit. The pavilion master said, we'll definitely make a profit? Nakayama of Silla nodded. Don't worry, Invakil. I asked you to protect this little guy. I won't cheat you. It won't be long before you and I reach the legendary inviolable state. After a moment of silence, Invakil said, I hope so. As he spoke, he paused and asked again, up until now, the only people who have reached the inviolable state in the entire Dao nation's history are Jun Daolin and Dao Ling, who might reach the inviolable state. As for the person backing young Master Yi, in the distance, Nakayama of Silla stopped and spoke softly, that's why it's terrifying. Because it means that our Dao nation isn't at the peak of this universe. As he spoke, he turned around and left. Invakil fell silent. At the end of the starry sky, Yi Xian was flying on his sword. He had already raised his speed to the limit. Because he had activated his bloodline and Qingxian sword, Xiao Xiao and the others couldn't catch up to him for a while. However, he didn't leave them behind either. Yi Xian's expression was extremely ugly. He realized that when he chose to escape, all the powerhouses chased after him. Behind him, there were a total of 39 Daolist realm powerhouses. 39. Among them, the corpse generals and divine general Yun weren't ordinary Daolist realm powerhouses. At this moment, Yi Xian suddenly asked, Xiao Ta, if Dad encountered such a situation, what would he do? Xiao Ta fell silent. Yi Xian's face was full of black lines. Don't play dead. Xiao Ta said, when Master encounters such a situation, he usually fights with his life. Yi Xian said in a deep voice, do you think I can win if I fight with my life on the line? Xiao Ta said, you can't win. Yi Xian asked, then do you have any ideas? After a moment of silence, Xiao Ta said, based on the current situation, I suggest that you surrender, young master. Yi Xian was speechless. At this moment, the space-time in front of Yi Xian suddenly split open. The next moment, an afterimage swept over. Yi Xian's eyes narrowed slightly, and the Qingxian sword in his hands suddenly flew out. Pust. Space-time tore open, and the afterimage was sent flying. And with that pause, Xiao Xiao and the others appeared in front of him. He was surrounded. Yi Xian looked at the dozens of Daolist realm powerhouses around him and sighed inwardly. At this moment, Xiao Xiao, who was in the lead, suddenly said, kill. No nonsense. He didn't want to give Yi Xian any chance. At this moment, Yi Xian suddenly said, I surrender. Surrender. As soon as he said that, the powerhouses who were about to attack stopped. Xiao Xiao frowned slightly. Surrender? Yi Xian nodded. I can't win. I surrender. Xiao Xiao looked at Yi Xian. Since you surrender, then hand over the sword in your hand and Yan Banyi. Yi Xian nodded. All right. As he spoke, he opened his palm, and the Qingxian sword flew to Xiao Xiao. Xiao Xiao's eyes narrowed slightly, and he glanced at Yi Xian before holding the Qingxian sword. The moment he held the Qingxian sword, he frowned again. A wave of uneasiness silently spread from the bottom of his heart. Yi Xian said, Aren't all of you curious about the person behind me? You can sense the person behind me through this sword. After looking at Yi Xian for a moment, Xiao Xiao suddenly let go of the Qingxian sword. Why should I sense the person behind you? Yi Xian's expression froze. Xiao Xiao sneered. Yi Xian, you said that you surrendered on purpose, and then gave me the sword. Your goal is to make me use this sword to sense the person behind you, and then use that person to kill me. As he spoke up to this point, his expression turned gloomy. Do I look like an idiot to you? Huh? Yi Xian was speechless. Damn it, this idiot doesn't play by the rules. Xiao Xiao put away the Qingxian sword, and then he said, Yi Xian, I know that there's someone behind you, and I know that the person behind you is extremely strong. But let me tell you, you must die today. Unless you call the person behind you over right now. Otherwise, you're dead today. As he spoke, he waved his hand. Kill. As soon as he spoke, the powerhouses around him charged at Yi Xian. In the distance, Yi Xian slowly closed his eyes, and the blood in his body boiled. One person against over 30 Daoist realm powerhouses? It was absolutely impossible. Although his strength had grown very quickly, and with the Qingxian sword, his combat strength could go head-on against Daoist realm powerhouses. However, there were dozens of Daoist realm powerhouses in front of him. How could he play this? Fight. Yi Xian knew that this was the only way out for him. Gradually, the aura around him grew stronger, and the hint of sobriety in his eyes faded bit by bit. At this moment, Xiao Ta's voice suddenly sounded in Yi Xian's mind. Young lord, do you want to try to sense Sister Tianming? Yi Xian laughed. No. As soon as he said that, the last hint of sobriety in his eyes disappeared. He had completely entered a state of madness. Chapter 1977. Could he sense Qing? Actually, he could. Even others could, so why couldn't he? So long as he wanted to, he would definitely be able to contact Qing. Because Qing wouldn't reject him. However, he didn't want to do that. It was completely different for others to sense Qing, and him to sense Qing. If he tried to sense Qing by himself, then he would have to rely on Qing for his entire lifetime. Because once he encountered any difficulties, then he wouldn't think of a way to overcome them by himself, and he'd try to sense Qing instead. If that happened, then he would be crippled. Because if that happened, then why would he need to cultivate? Wouldn't it be better to stay by Qing's side all the time? Moreover, so long as he was by Qing's side, then he would be invincible. So, not taking the initiative to sense Qing was his bottom line. When his last trace of consciousness vanished. Bang! A terrifying aura suddenly swept out from within him, and then the space and the surroundings instantly started seething. He issued a command in his heart, and then countless blood-red swords of energy shot out from behind him. Divine General Yun, who was charging at the front, suddenly raised his arm to block them. Bang! The sword energy arrived before him, and its formidable force blasted him flying over 1 kilometer away. Yi Xian suddenly roared furiously, "Soul!" In the distance, the expression of Xiao Xiao, who was about to attack, changed drastically. A sword howl resounded from within him. A moment later, Soul charged through his seal, and then it transformed into a ray of blood-red light that shot into Yi Xian's grasp. Xiao Xiao was astounded when he witnessed this scene. That sword was actually able to charge through his seal. Right at this moment, Yi Xian suddenly slashed forward with the azure sword in hand. An array of sword light shot out like a waterfall. The corpse general that was charging at the front was directly slashed flying, and it flew 30 kilometers away. When it finally came to a stop, its body had actually split into countless pieces. The expressions of everyone here changed drastically when they witnessed this scene. Even that corpse general couldn't resist Yi Xian's sword. For a time, the Daoist realm experts actually didn't dare to move. Because Yi Xian's attack just now was equivalent to instantly killing a corpse general. At this moment, Yi Xian seemed to be covered in blood. The space-time he was in was like a sea of blood. Powerful auras surged out from his body. Most importantly, his aura was getting stronger and stronger. Xiao Xiao said in a low voice, his aura is growing stronger and stronger. It means that he's utilizing a secret technique, and such a technique is usually unable to last for long. We just have to delay him for a while, and then he'll definitely die. Hearing this, everyone nodded their heads. The current Yi Xian was completely abnormal. He was overdrafting his own strength, and this kind of overdraft usually couldn't last for too long. As long as they delayed, Yi Xian would definitely die. Right at this moment, a sword suddenly appeared on the forehead of a divine General Yun in the distance. Qi! A stream of blood shot out from the back of divine General Yun's head. Everyone was astounded. Everyone looked at Yi Xian. The Qingxian sword had returned to his hand, and at this moment, the Qingxian sword in his hand was trembling slightly. This was because the Qingxian sword had absorbed the divine soul of divine General Yun. Meanwhile, Zhong Shou suddenly spoke fiercely, "Die." As soon as he finished speaking, he opened his palm, and a golden mirror appeared in his grasp. A moment later, he flipped his palm, and the golden mirror suddenly shone towards Yi Xian. After that, a golden beam of light surged out and shot towards Yi Xian. In the distance, Yi Xian swung his sword backhandedly. Bang! The golden beam of light instantly shattered and transformed into nothingness. Zhong Shou was stunned by this scene. It's gone just like that? Zhong Shou glanced at the mirror in his hand. It was Yun Jie's #1 divine artifact, the divine cloud mirror. If he utilized it, then even a Daoist realm expert would find it difficult to resist its might. But this fellow had actually shattered it with a single swing of his sword. The expressions of Xiao Xiao and the others had become extremely unsightly. Because Yi Xian's strength had actually risen to such an extent. Most importantly, this fellow's aura was still rising explosively as if it had no limit. Meanwhile, Xiao Xiao suddenly spoke in a low voice, "Wait. He's definitely going to be unable to hold on any longer." Zhong Shou hesitated for a moment and said, "Should we attack him together? He'll definitely die if we attack him together." Xiao Xiao shook her head. "Even though we can kill him if we attack him together, his current strength and that sword in his possession can definitely be exchanged for many of us. That's too much of a loss. We just have to delay him a little longer. At that time, we don't even have to do anything because he'll be finished by himself." Zhong Shou gazed at Yi Xian while his brows knit together slightly. Actually, he was quite uneasy right now. Because up until now, Yi Xian's aura was still rising explosively. Most importantly, this fellow didn't seem to be on the verge of suffering backlash. However, he knew that he would definitely suffer backlash if he utilized such a secret technique. When he thought up to here, Zhong Shou spoke in a low voice, "Everyone, set up the formation." As he spoke, he was about to attack. Meanwhile, Xiao Xiao shook her head once more. "There's no need to set up the formation. That sort of his can disregard space, so space-time formations are utterly useless against him. We just have to keep our distance from him, and all of us can attack together to stop his flying sword when he attacks." The others nodded in agreement. Presently, they didn't want to go head-on against Yi Xian as well. Because Yi Xian was simply a madman, an abnormal madman. Most importantly, his sword was extremely terrifying. The first person to attack him had a very high chance of dying. No one was confident in their ability to resist a single strike of Yi Xian's sword at this moment. On the other hand, Yi Xian had no intention of attacking in the distance. He just stood there as if he was waiting for something. Yi Xian held the green profound sword in his right hand, and it had transformed into a blood-red sword. The green profound sword wasn't a sword spirit, so it was able to keep his mind clear. At this moment, he'd entered a completely berserk state. However, he didn't attack, and he was waiting. No one knew what he was waiting for. Meanwhile, Zhong Shou suddenly said, "Retreat." Because the space before them had actually turned blood red, and even they were affected by the killing intent and evil energy within it. All of them retreated over 10 kilometers when they heard this. However, they'd surrounded Yi Xian, so it was utterly impossible for Yi Xian to flee now. Just like that, time passed slowly. Yi Xian's aura was still rising explosively, but he still showed no signs of suffering backlash. The expressions of Zhong Shou and the others grew more and more unsightly when they witnessed this scene. Meanwhile, Zhong Shou suddenly said, "Sect Master Shao, let your corpse general hold him back for now, and then we'll attack together to kill him. What do you think?" Xiao Shao fell silent. With Yi Xian's current strength, if the corpse general attacked him, then he would most likely be killed. Moreover, he might even lose more than one corpse general. Presently, the law enforcement sect didn't have many corpse generals left. If they lost even more. Meanwhile, Zhong Shou spoke solemnly, "Sect Master Shao, how about this? I'll send out Divine General Yun, and you send out a corpse general. 2 peak Daoless realm experts will be enough to hold him back. So long as we can hold him back, then we'll be able to kill him. Otherwise, something unexpected might happen if this continues." Xiao Shao glanced at Yi Xian who didn't move, and he fell silent for a moment before he said, "All right." As soon as he finished speaking, he issued a command in his heart, and a corpse general charged at Yi Xian. At the same time, another Divine General Yun charged over as well. However, he was slightly smarter, and he'd slowed down on purpose. At the instant that Divine General Yun and the corpse general charged over, Xiao Shao and the others immediately attacked as well. Just as the corpse general was about to reach Yi Xian suddenly raised his head. In the next moment, before anyone could react, a beam of sword light slashed at the corpse general. Bang! The corpse general was instantly obliterated. Right at this instant, the azure sword in Yi Xian's hand suddenly vanished. At the same time, a blood-red armor appeared around his body. The armor protected his entire body. At practically the exact same moment, countless powerful strands of energy drowned Yi Xian. Rumble. 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 For a time, the entire heavens and the earth shook violently. How terrifying was it when a few dozen Daoless realm experts attacked in unison. In an instant, the area where Yi Xian stood had been transformed into a pitch-black vortex, and the space where he stood had been obliterated. It didn't take long for Xiao Shao and the others to be stunned. Because they noticed that while the space where Yi Xian stood had been obliterated, Yi Xian was still alive. He was still alive. Zhong Shou gazed at Yi Xian with disbelief. How could this be possible? Xiao Zhao's eyes were filled with disbelief as well, and his hands had started to tremble. It was a full-force attack from a few dozen Daoless realm experts. But this fellow actually resisted it? What sort of monster is he? Right at this moment, Yi Xian suddenly vanished on the spot. Along with his disappearance, a blood-red sword light flashed through the battlefield. Hiss! One of the Divine General Yun's brows were pierced through by a sword before he could even react. Meanwhile, all of them reacted to what had happened. Zhong Shou roared furiously, "Kill him! Kill him!" Upon hearing this, all the powerhouses present charged towards Yi Xian again. Suddenly, the sword in Yi Xian's hand transformed into a blood-red armor that enveloped his body. Rumble. Yi Xian was blasted by countless strands of energy again, and the space around him was obliterated. They were about to attack again when a terrifying force suddenly appeared here. The expressions of Zhong Shou and the others changed drastically, and they stopped what they were doing. They raised their heads and saw bolts of blood-red divine lightning suddenly appear in the sky. All of them were horrified by this scene, and they retreated explosively. The laws. Xiao Xiao and the others had extremely unsightly expressions on their faces. They'd actually forgotten that this expanse of space was covered in the energy of the laws that Jun Daolin had left behind. So long as they destroyed this expanse of space, then they would trigger the restrictions that Jun Daolin had left behind. But they'd actually forgotten about that just now. Suddenly, Xiao Xiao spoke furiously, "Retreat. Don't utilize any profound energy at all. Let Yi Xian deal with those laws." All of them retreated in unison, and then they restrained their auras. Meanwhile, Yi Xian suddenly stood on the spot, and then his aura vanished. Moreover, it was like he didn't exist at all, and all of them dared to say that they couldn't sense him. Xiao Xiao was on the verge of exploding with rage when she witnessed this scene. "Have you really gone mad or are you faking it?" All of them were speechless. Meanwhile, Xiao Ta suddenly sighed softly. Even though the young master has gone mad, he's still wretched to the core. But he's still wretched in his bones. Chapter 1978. Is he really mad or is he faking it? Actually, Yi Xian had really gone mad right now. But just as Xiao Ta had said, while he was mad, he was still a wretched person in his bones. However, he was still wretched in his bones. This was completely an instinct. Even a lunatic would have instincts. Meanwhile, the aura of the blood-red divine lightning in the sky was growing stronger, and it was so strong that it filled them with despair. It was the energy of the laws of peerless realm experts. Even if countless years had passed, it was still so strong that it filled them with despair. This was what an peerless realm expert was like. Xiao Xiao and the others gazed at the blood-red divine lightning, and besides fear, there was a trace of yearning in their eyes. Their lifelong pursuit was the peerless realm. Meanwhile, Xiao Xiao suddenly gazed at Yi Xian. At this moment, Yi Xian was still standing there without moving, but his aura was still rising explosively. It really seemed like there was no limit to it. Xiao Xiao's expression turned unsightly when he witnessed this scene. Is this fellow's bloodline really immune to backlash? Zhong Shou suddenly spoke solemnly. His bloodline is. How terrifying. He's absolutely not an ordinary person. Xiao Zhao's expression was gloomy. I know he's not an ordinary person, but so what? Do we have a way out now? Zhong Shou fell silent. Actually, they had no way out since a very long time ago. If they cut off all means of retreat now, then they might have a chance at survival. When he thought up to here, Zhong Shou spoke solemnly. What should we do now? Xiao Xiao raised his head to glance at the energy of the laws, and then he said, we'll wait for the laws to vanish. Zhong Shou was just about to speak when the divine lightning suddenly rained down from the sky. Their targets were everyone here, including Yi Xian. Everyone who'd attacked just now. The expressions of everyone here instantly changed drastically when they witnessed this scene. Xiao Xiao roared furiously, retreat for now. As soon as he finished speaking, he immediately led the others to turn around and flee. As for Yi Xian, he was fleeing as well. However, the divine lightning seemed to have a mind of its own as it chased after them at an extremely fast speed. All the Daolist realm experts here were terrified out of their wits when they witnessed this scene, and then they fled desperately towards the distance. Yi Xian fled even faster, but he was still caught up by a blood-colored divine lightning. He suddenly turned around, and the green profound sword transformed into a sword shield in front of him. Rumble. The blood-colored divine lightning struck the green profound sword, causing it to tremble violently. Boom! Yi Xian was blasted hundreds of thousands of meters away along with his shield. As soon as he stopped moving, he spat out a mouthful of blood essence. Moreover, his body had even split apart. However, his sword and shield were still intact. Right at this moment, Yi Xian suddenly raised his head. The bolt of blood-red lightning hadn't vanished, and it was chasing after him again. A trace of malevolence flashed across Yi Xian's eyes. He opened his palm and the azure profound sword appeared in his hand. He dashed forward and slashed down with his sword. Chi! A blood-red sword light slashed down and directly slashed the divine lightning. Bang! The sword light exploded into pieces while Yi Xian was blasted over 100 m away. When his figure finally stopped, he'd fallen into a spatial abyss. As soon as he entered the spatial abyss, countless strands of terrifying energy swept towards him like waves, and they were about to drown him. Yi Xian didn't dodge and allowed them to drown him. Bang! The spatial abyss seethed, but Yi Xian was completely fine. Meanwhile, the bolt of divine lightning didn't pursue him. It just stopped outside the spatial abyss, and it gradually started to vanish bit by bit as if it hadn't sensed Yi Xian's presence. As soon as the bolt of divine lightning vanished, Yi Xian charged forward. On the other side. Because Xiao Zhao's group had come to an end as well. More than half of Xiao Zhao's group had perished. All the corpse generals had been annihilated. All of them had been annihilated. Because at the last moment of crisis, Xiao Xiao had gotten all the corpse generals to block in front of him. He had no choice but to do so. If he hadn't done so, he might have died. Yun Jie's group had also suffered heavy losses. More than half of them had perished, and Divine General Yun only had 2 left. Originally, both sides had 39 Taoist realm experts, but now, there were less than 10 of them left. Xiao Zhao's face was terrifyingly gloomy. Zhong Shou's face was ashen. "We're finished." Xiao Xiao said fiercely, "Kill that Yi Xian." Zhong Shou roared, "How are we going to kill him?" Xiao Xiao said, "Do you think he can withstand that divine lightning?" Hearing that, Zhong Shou's brows slightly furrowed. Xiao Xiao clenched his fists tightly. That divine lightning was left behind by Jun Daolin. It contains powerful law energy. Even a peak Taoist realm expert can't withstand it. Right at this moment, his voice stopped abruptly because the head of an expert from the enforcement sect had fallen slowly to the ground not too far away from him. Everyone's expressions changed drastically. Meanwhile, Yi Xian had appeared not too far away from them. As for Yi Xian, he was perfectly fine. Xiao Xiao instantly went mad when he witnessed this scene. "You. How could you possibly?" Yi Xian suddenly vanished on the spot. Hiss. A ray of blood-red light flashed through the battlefield like a thunderclap. Xiao Zhao's pupils constricted. He didn't retreat but charged forward instead, and then he smashed his fist towards Yi Xian's sword. He went head-on against it. As soon as his fist and sword collided. Bang! Along with a world-shaking explosion, both of them retreated explosively at the same time. Moreover, when Xiao Xiao stopped moving, his entire right arm had transformed into nothingness. The expressions of Zhong Shou and the others instantly became extremely unsightly when they witnessed this scene. Meanwhile, Xiao Xiao roared furiously, "What are all of you looking at? Fight him to the death." All of them recovered from their shock when they heard Xiao Xiao, and a wisp of a ferocious expression flashed through Zhong Shou's eyes. "Kill." As soon as he spoke, all of them charged at Yi Xian. At this moment, they couldn't be bothered about anything else. "Either you die, or I die. Let's go all out." At this moment, Yi Xian, who was in the distance, suddenly turned around and ran. In the blink of an eye, he disappeared into the horizon, leaving only a sea of blood behind him. All of them were stunned when they witnessed this scene. That fellow ran? He ran? He's not going to fight anymore? Zhong Shou and the others felt extremely aggrieved. It was like their punches had struck cotton. Suddenly, a ray of blood-red light flashed. Hiss. The head of one of the Taoist realm experts flew into the air while blood sprayed over 10 m away. The expressions of everyone here changed drastically. All of them turned around to look at the ray of blood-red light that had vanished in the distance. He killed Qin Shi and fled. The expressions of the Taoist realm experts were unsightly to the extreme when they witnessed this scene. Of course, there was even more fear in their hearts right now. At this moment, they were truly terrified. In the beginning, Yi Xian was only barely able to fight a Daoless realm expert. But now, Yi Xian could instantly kill a Daoless realm expert. Most importantly, Yi Xian's aura was still rising explosively. If this continues, then this fellow will probably even be able to kill a half-step in action realm expert. Their expressions grew even more unsightly when they thought up to this point. Meanwhile, Xiao Xiao spoke ferociously, "Hill." As he spoke up to this point, a ray of light suddenly appeared here. The expressions of everyone here changed drastically. Zhong Shou suddenly turned around and pressed his palms together. Bang! A sword was clamped between his palms, but it only took a moment for his palms to shatter. Meanwhile, the experts by his side attacked in unison. Rumble. An afterimage was blasted over 10 kilometers away. It was Yi Xian. As soon as he was blasted flying, Yi Xian turned around and flashed away, and he vanished into the horizon. He ran again. Zhong Shou's face was as red as a pig's liver. The surroundings suddenly fell deathly silent. What should we do? They didn't want to think about it, but they were helpless against Yi Xian now. No one could resist Yi Xian's current attack. Meanwhile, Zhong Shou gazed at Xiao Xiao, "Think of a way." All of them looked at Xiao Xiao. Xiao Xiao remained silent for a long time, and then he gazed at Zhong Shou. "Can you still summon your ancestor?" Zhong Shou spoke solemnly, "I can. But I'm worried that..." Xiao Xiao shook his head, "There's nothing we can do. Only a half-step in action realm expert can suppress him. Otherwise, we'll be exhausted to death if this continues." Meanwhile, a Daoless realm expert spoke abruptly, "Will he really not suffer backlash?" Everyone's faces fell once more. Backlash. A long time had passed since the beginning, but Yi Xian showed no signs of suffering from backlash. Conversely, this guy was becoming fiercer and fiercer. Xiao Xiao fell silent. In fact, he didn't understand it either. Up until now, Yi Xian showed no signs of suffering from backlash. Conversely, Yi Xian's strength had increased by countless times. What kind of bloodline is this? Most disgusting of all was that Yi Xian seemed like a madman, but he wasn't mad at all. Meanwhile, Zhong Shou suddenly opened his palm, and a token appeared in his hand. Immediately after that, the token floated up slowly and transformed into a wisp of green smoke that vanished into the horizon. Bang! Meanwhile, a figure appeared in the sky, and it gradually became material. It wasn't long before a middle-aged man appeared within their fields of vision. Zhong Shou and the others hurriedly bowed respectfully when they saw the middle-aged man. "Greetings, martial ancestor." The founder of Yunjia, Yunmengzi. At his peak, he was at half-step inanimate realm. Although it was only half-step, it was already very terrifying. There was still a world of difference between Daoless realm and half-step inanimate realm. At this moment, Yunmengzi looked down at Zhong Shou with an expressionless face. "What's wrong?" Zhong Shou bowed respectfully and then recounted what had happened. When Zhong Shou finished, Yunmengzi narrowed his eyes slightly. "That Yi Xian has Dao Ling's inheritance?" Zhong Shou hurriedly said, "Yes." Hearing that, the corners of Yunmengzi's mouth lifted slightly. Interesting, interesting. He actually has Dao Ling's inheritance, and this Dao Ling. At this point, a trace of unwillingness flashed in his eyes. "I never thought that someone in the future could reach inanimate realm." Zhong Shou and the others didn't dare to speak. At this moment, Yunmengzi looked into the distance and said indifferently, "Still hiding?" As soon as he said that, he grabbed the air with his right hand. With this grab, the space-time there suddenly distorted, and the next moment, a blood-colored sword light tore through the air. Seeing this scene, Yunmengzi's mouth curled into a disdainful smile. "Trying to escape in front of me?" As soon as he said that, he took a step forward. Chapter 1979. Yunmengzi took a step forward, and the space in the distance suddenly split apart. A ray of blood-red light shattered, and then a figure retreated explosively. It was Yi Xian. Yi Xian retreated for over 100 kilometers before he stopped, and Yunmengzi appeared in front of him as soon as he stopped. Yunmengzi frowned slightly as he looked at Yi Xian. Uneasy. A trace of uneasiness had actually arisen in the depths of his heart when he saw Yi Xian. Moreover, the stronger his killing intent was, the stronger this trace of uneasiness was. He's not simple. Yunmengzi looked at Yi Xian and didn't attack for a while. Meanwhile, Xiao Xiao and the others had arrived. When they saw that Yunmengzi didn't attack, Xiao Xiao and Zhong Shou's expressions became slightly unsightly. They were worried. Both of them were slightly worried that Yunmengzi would betray them like the ancestor of the law enforcement sect. Suddenly, Yunmengzi chuckled, interesting. He's actually able to make me feel threatened. As he spoke, a wisp of killing intent flashed through his eyes. However, I like to do the opposite. He took a step forward as soon as he finished speaking. As soon as his foot touched the ground, an extremely dreadful force suddenly crushed down from the top of Yi Xian's head. Meanwhile, Yi Xian opened his palm. OM. A ray of sword light shot into the sky. Hiss. The sword tore through the sky, and the powerful force was instantly shattered. Yunmengzi's eyes narrowed slightly when he saw this, and then he suddenly smashed his fist forward. Bang! Yi Xian was punched into a mysterious origin of space and time. When he fell into the mysterious abyss of space and time, a black space-time divine thunder suddenly struck him. Yi Xian didn't dodge. Bang! The bolt of space-time lightning entered the green profound sword and was completely absorbed. Yunmengzi frowned slightly. Meanwhile, Zhong Shou hurriedly said, "Martial ancestor, that sword in his hand can disregard space." Sword. Yunmengzi looked at the green profound sword in Yi Xian's hand. A moment later, a trace of astonishment flashed across his eyes. This sword is indeed extraordinary. As he spoke, he spread out his right hand and pressed down lightly. In an instant, the space where Yi Xian was turned into a huge space-time net. Seeing this scene, Zhong Shou and Xiao Zhao's expressions became slightly unsightly. Damn it, I already said this fellow can ignore space-time, but this Yunmengzi actually wants to use space-time to deal with Yi Xian. In the distance, Yi Xian still did not dodge. He allowed the space-time net to envelop him. Without any mishap, he absorbed it cleanly. A look of surprise flashed in Yunmengzi's eyes. It really can ignore any space-time. Interesting. Zhong Shou hesitated for a moment, and then he said, "Grandmaster, this person's bloodline is extremely special. The longer it lasts, the stronger he becomes." What he meant was, hurry up and F***king kill him. Yunmengzi gazed at Zhong Shou. Are you teaching me how to do things? His voice was icy cold and pierced through the heart. Zhong Shou's expression changed drastically, and he hurriedly said, I wouldn't dare. Yunmengzi glanced at Zhong Shou, and then he gazed at Yi Xian. He was about to speak when a blood-red sword stabbed towards him like a thunderclap. A trace of disdain flashed in Yunmengzi's eyes, and then he clamped his fingers together. Bang! The green profound sword was clamped, but in the next moment, his expression changed drastically, and he hurriedly let go of the green profound sword before retreating explosively. Because at the instant he clamped Yi Xian's sword, the green profound sword was actually absorbing him. It can even devour souls? A trace of disbelief flashed in Yunmengzi's eyes. Meanwhile, Yi Xian appeared in front of him once more, and then a sword slashed down from above his head. Hiss. Spacetime was torn apart. A wisp of ruthlessness flashed in Yunmengzi's eyes. He flicked his sleeve, and a powerful force surged out. Bang! That force forcefully resisted Yi Xian's green profound sword. Meanwhile, Yi Xian suddenly roared furiously. Bang! A wave of monstrous killing intent and evil energy instantly enveloped Yunmengzi, and the impact of the powerful killing intent and evil energy caused Yunmengzi's mind to become dazed. However, it was at this instant that Yi Xian's green profound sword suddenly entered Yun Mengzi's head. Yun Mengzi was stunned. Zhong Shou and the others were stunned as well. It's gone just like that? Meanwhile, Yi Xian suddenly retreated over 100 m while his green profound sword was madly devouring Yun Mengzi's soul. Yun Mengzi gazed at Yi Xian with a savage expression. Just you wait. At this moment, Yi Xian suddenly gave him the middle finger. Yun Mengzi instantly went berserk, and he roared like a wild beast. Ant! How dare you look down on me? The green profound sword suddenly trembled violently, and then it completely absorbed Yun Mengzi's soul. After it absorbed Yun Mengzi's soul, the green profound sword directly transformed into a sword light and returned to Yi Xian's hand. It's gone. At the side, Zhong Shou and the others were silent. Yi Xian's strength was growing every moment, and there really was no limit. At this moment, Yi Xian suddenly looked at Zhong Shou and the others, and a trace of fear flashed in Zhong Shou's eyes. Retreat. He didn't want to fight anymore. Because he couldn't win. Without the slightest hesitation, Zhong Shou led the remaining experts of Yunjia and turned to flee. However, Xiao Xiao didn't flee. Xiao Xiao just stared fixedly at Yi Xian. Yi Xian, I know you're not crazy, and I also know that I will die without a doubt. Before I die, I want to see the person behind you. This request. Qi. A blood sword suddenly pierced through his brows, and a stream of blood spurted out from the back of his head. The corner of Yi Xian's mouth lifted slightly. Not worthy. With that, he turned into a sword light and disappeared into the distance. The green profound sword crazily devoured Xiao Zhao's soul, and a moment later, the green profound sword suddenly turned into a sword light and disappeared into the distance. Xiao Xiao no longer existed in this world. Yi Xian didn't chase after Zhong Shou and the others, but directly went to the law enforcement sect. At this moment, the law enforcement sect was in chaos, because just a moment ago, the sect leader's soul tablet had shattered, which meant that the sect leader had died. Not only that, all the Daoless realm experts who went out were also gone. Some sharp-eyed ones had already fled, but there were still some who didn't. On this day, a blood sword suddenly flew into the law enforcement sect, and the next moment, a series of miserable screams rang out. Yi Xian stood in the sky above the law enforcement sect, his eyes closed, and waves of blood gushed out from his body. Soon, the sky above the law enforcement sect was turned into a sea of blood. At this moment, Xiao Ta suddenly said, "Young lord, are you crazy?" In fact, Xiao Ta also couldn't figure out whether Yi Xian was crazy or not. If you said he was crazy, he was very cunning and even knew how to mock people, but if you said he was not crazy, he could feel that Yi Xian had completely activated the power of bloodline. Yi Xian didn't respond to Xiao Ta, his eyes closed, and if you looked closely, you could see that his body was trembling slightly. Xiao Ta continued to ask, "Young lord, are you really crazy or pretending to be crazy?" At this moment, Yi Xian opened his palm, and Xiao Ta appeared in his hand. Xiao Ta hurriedly said, "You. Young lord, what are you doing?" He knew how terrifying the crazy demon bloodline was, and when his master activated the bloodline, he really didn't recognize his own family. Yi Xian didn't attack, and he just looked at Xiao Ta. His eyes were like a sea of blood, and it was extremely terrifying. When he saw that Yi Xian didn't intend to attack, Xiao Ta relaxed, and he was about to speak when Yi Xian suddenly punched Xiao Ta. Bang! Xiao Ta was blasted thousands of meters away. Ah! A shrill cry resounded from the distant sky. At this moment, Yi Xian vanished on the spot, and in the next moment, he punched Xiao Ta again. Bang! Xiao Ta flew out again. In the sky, Xiao Ta said angrily, "Young lord. Are you really crazy or pretending to be crazy?" There was no answer. Yi Xian chased after Xiao Ta and beat him up. About 15 minutes later, Yi Xian finally stopped. In the sky, Xiao Ta hid at the side and shivered. At this moment, Yi Xian opened his palm, and the green profound sword flew into his hand. The green profound sword was blood red. Below, there was no one left alive in the entire law enforcement sect. Sect annihilation. Yi Xian kept the green profound sword, and turned into a blood-red sword ray, disappearing at the end of the sky. But very quickly, he turned back and appeared in front of Xiao Ta, and then kept Xiao Ta into his body. Then, he turned into a blood-red sword ray, disappearing at the end of the sky. In Yi Xian's body, Xiao Ta was confused. Damn. Young lord, are you crazy? Yi Xian did not answer. Xiao Ta was a little annoyed. This young lord might not be crazy. Could it be that I got beaten up for nothing? Should I kill my young lord? Thinking of this, Xiao Ta was shocked by himself. Recently, he seemed to be a little arrogant. Daolin Nation. Nakayama of Silla stood on the city wall. He looked at the sky, and his whole person was a little dazed. Yi Xian killed dozens of Daolis realm experts. This was the news he had just received. Nakayama of Silla was silent. Originally, he thought that the person behind Yi Xian would definitely appear, but he did not expect that the person behind Yi Xian did not appear at all, and Yi Xian alone killed those Daolis realm experts. This was too unbelievable. At this moment, Invakil appeared, and he said in a deep voice, "The law enforcement sect is gone." Nakayama of Silla said softly, "He destroyed it?" Invakil nodded, "He went to Yunjia now." Nakayama of Silla was silent. Invakil was also silent. At this moment, he was feeling lucky. In fact, he had wanted to kill Yi Xian at the beginning, and he wanted to intercept the law enforcement sect in Yunjia. He wanted to kill Yi Xian first, and then obtain Yi Xian and Yan Bianshan's inheritance. However, Nakayama of Silla convinced him. Fortunately, he did not do that, or the Invakil pavilion would disappear completely. Invakil looked at Nakayama of Silla. "What should we do next?" Nakayama of Silla laughed. "The law enforcement sect is destroyed, their territory." "Huh," Invakil hesitated, and then said, "That was destroyed by young Master Yi. It's not good for us to go and take it, right?" Nakayama of Silla laughed. "That's easy. We will occupy the territory, and then give him the Supreme God Crystal." Invakil nodded slightly. "All right." Nakayama of Silla was about to speak, but at this moment, a shadow appeared in front of him. It was unknown what the shadow said, but Nakayama of Silla's pupils suddenly shrank. "There's a change." Chapter 1980. There's a change. Invakil frowned slightly when he heard Nakayama of Silla's words. "What's wrong?" Nakayama of Silla was silent for a moment before a ruthless glint flashed in his eyes. "Let's go." After saying that, he disappeared on the spot. Invakil hesitated for a moment before he followed. Yunjia. Yunjia was located in the clouds. Back then, ancestor Yunjia used the clouds to comprehend Tao, so he created Yunjia in the clouds. In the era of Yunmengzi, Yunjia was number 1. Back then, Yunmengzi was actually an extraordinary genius as well. He had a chance to reach the inaction state as well. Unfortunately, he hadn't been able to break through the last level. Even so, he was still known as the number 1 person after Jun Daolin, until Dao Ling appeared. Back then, Yunmengzi was known as the number 1 under the inaction realm. On this day, a blood-red light suddenly appeared above Yunjia. Inside Yunjia, Zhong Shou looked up at the sky. A man stood in the sky. It was Yi Xian. Yi Xian's aura was still growing. Seeing this, Zhong Shou's expression became extremely ugly. Will this guy really not suffer from the backlash? At this moment, Yi Xian suddenly opened his palm, and a blood-red sword slashed down from the sky. Zhong Shou's expression changed drastically. Formation. As soon as he said that, the surrounding clouds suddenly gathered to form a huge cloud shield above everyone. The sword slashed down. Boom! The cloud shield shook violently, but it didn't break. Zhong Shou and the others immediately heaved a sigh of relief. At this moment, another blood-red sword slashed down. Boom! With a deafening sound, the cloud shield shook violently and then cracked. Seeing this scene, the faces of Zhong Shou and the others instantly darkened. In the sky, Yi Xian swung his sword madly, and the cracks on the cloud shield became bigger and bigger. Zhong Shou suddenly roared, killing a ray. As soon as he finished speaking, beams of light shot into the sky and blasted straight at Yi Xian. In the sky, Yi Xian willed and the green profound sword suddenly turned into a sword shield in front of him. Boom 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 boom. The sword and shield trembled violently, but it forcibly blocked all the light pillars. Seeing this scene, Zhong Shou's eyes flashed with malevolence. Continue. As soon as he finished speaking, countless powerful forces shot into the sky from below and blasted straight at Yi Xian. At this moment, Yun Jia activated all the formations. In the sky, Yi Xian stood behind the sword and shield, allowing the powerful forces to strike the green profound sword. The two sides were in a deadlock. Gradually, the faces of Zhong Shou and the other experts of Yun Jia darkened. Because activating these formations consumed a huge amount of energy, and if this continued, then Yun Jia wouldn't be able to hold on at all. Once the formations were gone, then would anyone be able to stop Yi Xian from charging down? Zhong Shou stared fixedly at Yi Xian who stood in the sky, and he clenched his fists tightly. He was panicking. At this moment, he really had started to panic. Because if this continued, then Yun Jia would definitely be unable to hold on. Once Yun Jia was unable to hold on, then no one would be able to stop Yi Xian's sword. Meanwhile, Zhong Shou spoke abruptly, use all the resources of the sect to maintain the formations. One of the experts by his side stepped back when he heard this. Zhong Shou looked up at Yi Xian, and then he said, Yi Xian, I know you're not mad. I want to talk to you. In the sky, Yi Xian didn't speak, and he just stood behind his sword and shield. Zhong Shou continued, Yi Xian, continuing to fight will only cause both sides to suffer. Moreover, I can tell you that my founding ancestor, Yun Jia, Yun Mengzi, hasn't perished. If you go too far. At this moment, Yi Xian suddenly turned around and disappeared into the horizon. He ran. Zhong Shou was stunned when he witnessed this scene. This fellow is willing to make peace? It didn't take long for him to deny such a foolish thought. Yi Xian had just annihilated the enforcement sect, so based on Yi Xian's character, how could he possibly make peace? Meanwhile, one of the experts of Yun Jia spoke in a low voice, Sect leader, should we withdraw the formations or not? Zhong Shou's expression suddenly became unsightly when he heard this. He had already figured out Yi Xian's intentions. Yi Xian was retreating in order to advance. If Yi Xian retreated, then they would face a problem. Should they withdraw the formations or not? If they didn't withdraw, the formations would consume a huge amount of energy, and Yun Jia wouldn't be able to hold on for long. Because Yun Jia had activated all the formations. Once they withdrew, what should they do if Yi Xian suddenly turned back? Once the formation was gone, who would be able to stop Yi Xian? To withdraw or not to withdraw? Zhong Shou was in a dilemma. The experts of Yun Jia understood this as well, and they immediately fell into silence. Zhong Shou glanced at the sky and released his divine sense. In the next moment, his expression changed. He sensed a vicious and murderous intent. Yi Xian is still here. They couldn't withdraw the formations. If they withdrew the formations, Yi Xian would definitely return and kill them. At that time, Yun Jia would be finished. Zhong Shou said fiercely, everyone, I've received news that the ancestral master will arrive soon. As long as we hold on for a while, Yi Xian will definitely die. At this time, one of the experts of Yun Jia said in a low voice, Realm Lord, if the person behind Yi Xian appears. Zhong Shou turned around and roared, why do you have so much nonsense to say? The expert of Yun Jia was dumbfounded. On the other side, Yi Xian stood quietly among the clouds. His eyes were slightly closed, and the clouds around him had turned blood red. Yi Xian just stood there, and no one knew what he was going to do. Xiao Ta dared not speak. When Yi Xian was normal, it dared to be mischievous. But now, Yi Xian was obviously not normal. If it dared to be mischievous, it would definitely be beaten up. However, it firmly believed that Yi Xian was pretending to be crazy. Because when Yi Xian hit it, he used his fists instead of the Qingxian sword. One should know that the Qingxian sword could hurt its core, but Yi Xian did not use it. Obviously, Yi Xian was pretending to be crazy. But it dared not say it. It was afraid of being beaten up. A person who was really crazy was not scary. What was scary was a person who was pretending to be crazy. However, it was also a little curious. How could this young master remain conscious after completely activating his bloodline? Could it be that the young master's bloodline was not pure? At this moment, Yi Xian suddenly opened his eyes. The moment he opened his eyes, the spacetime in front of him turned blood red at a speed visible to the naked eye. In the blink of an eye, the spacetime in front of him turned into a sea of blood. Yi Xian turned around, and with this turn, the entire sky turned into a sea of blood. Not long after, Yi Xian appeared in the sky above Yunjia again. Seeing Yi Xian again, Zhong Shou and the others' faces instantly turned ugly. Damn it! This idiot is here again. Just as Zhong Shou was about to speak, Yi Xian suddenly turned into a sword light and slashed at him. Zhong Shou's eyelid twitched, and he quickly said, "Defend." As soon as he said that, countless light pillars shot up from within Yunjia. This time, Yi Xian did not defend, but rushed forward. Yi Xian slashed down with his sword. Hiss! One of the light pillars was directly split into two, but in the next moment, countless light pillars directly drowned him. Boom! Yi Xian was blasted thousands of meters away. Seeing this, Zhong Shou and the others instantly heaved sighs of relief. At this moment, Yi Xian suddenly disappeared on the spot. Hiss! A blood-red sword light shot down from the sky. Boom! A light pillar was directly slashed into pieces, but countless light pillars continued to rush up from within Yunjia. Therefore, after Yi Xian slashed a light pillar, he would be drowned by countless light pillars in the next moment. But this time, Yi Xian actually did not retreat, and continued to slash madly. Gradually, the faces of Zhong Shou and the others became more and more unsightly. Because they noticed that Yi Xian was advancing. Although it was very slow, he was advancing bit by bit. Zhong Shou stared at Yi Xian, his hands were clenched tightly, and his hands were trembling. At this time, an expert of Yunjia who was beside him said miserably, "Realm Lord, what should we do?" If this continued, sooner or later, Yi Xian would break the formation and rush into Yunjia. After a moment of silence, Zhong Shou said, "All of you, leave. Leave." When they heard this, the experts of the cloud world were stunned. Zhong Shou said softly, "Let's go." An expert of Yunjia said in a low voice, "Then Realm Lord, you." Zhong Shou chuckled, "His target has always been me." Everyone was silent. Zhong Shou said again, "Hurry up and leave." In the field, the experts of Yunjia looked at each other, no one moved. Zhong Shou looked at everyone, "If you can survive, rebuild Yunjia in the future. Dying here now is meaningless, understand?" Everyone looked at each other again, they were still hesitant. At this time, Yi Xian was about to enter Yunjia. Seeing this, no one hesitated anymore, they turned around and left. Zhong Shou looked up at Yi Xian in the sky, he slowly clenched his right hand, and a powerful force gathered in his palm. At this moment, as a beam of blood-red light erupted, the beam of light in the sky was completely shattered by Yi Xian. The whole sky was a mess. Most importantly, Yi Xian controlled his force very well. He did not destroy the spacetime of this universe, so he did not attract Jun Daoling's law. In the sky, Yi Xian slowly walked down with the blood sword in his hand. Below, Zhong Shou laughed, "Yi Xian, come." As soon as he said this, he suddenly leaped up into the sky with a powerful force. In the sky, Yi Xian suddenly stopped, and then he took a step forward, and with each step he took, he slashed with his sword. Hiss! In the sky, Zhong Shou's body froze in the air, and Yi Xian had appeared behind him. Yi Xian opened his palm and continued walking down. Behind him, Zhong Shou's eyes were dull. He had not expected Yi Xian's strength to grow to such an extent in such a short period of time. He was led into a trap by Xiao Xiao. The color in Zhong Shou's eyes gradually disappeared, and at this time, he seemed to see something, and his eyes suddenly opened wide, and he became excited. Below, Yi Xian opened his palm, and the green profound sword returned to his hand. He turned to look at the sky, and in the distant sky, a middle-aged man was slowly walking over. This person was none other than Yunmengzi. This time, it was not a clone, nor was it a strand of soul, but his real body. His real body had arrived. At this time, Zhong Shou suddenly laughed. Yi Xian. Yi Xian. Your death is here. Ha. You. At this time, a sword suddenly pierced through the back of his head, and then into his mouth. His voice stopped abruptly. Chapter 1981. Yi Xian walked over to Zhong Shou, turned around, and drew his sword. Hiss! The green profound sword was pulled out of Zhong Shou's mouth, and a stream of blood sprayed out. At the same time, Zhong Shou's soul was devoured by the green profound sword. Yunmengzi walked slowly towards Yi Xian. Yunmengzi. His main body. Meanwhile, Nakayama of Silla and Invakil had solemn expressions on their faces. They hadn't expected Yunmengzi's main body to come here. This fellow had reached the half-step inaction realm countless years ago. Moreover, he was known as the #1 expert below the inaction realm. Now that so many years had passed, even if he hadn't reached the inaction realm, it was impossible that he hadn't improved. They were in big trouble. Invakil spoke solemnly. Nakayama of Silla, what should we do now? Nakayama of Silla fell silent for a moment, and then he said, it's beyond our ability. Invakil fell silent. Indeed, with Yunmengzi's appearance, it wasn't something that he and Nakayama of Silla could interfere with. Moreover, if Yi Xian died, then they might die as well. Would Yunmengzi let them go? He definitely wouldn't. Meanwhile, Chen Shi suddenly walked towards Yunmengzi with a blood-red sword in his hand. A mocking smile curled up the corners of Yunmengzi's mouth. What? You want to kill me? Yi Xian suddenly vanished on the spot. Yunmengzi pressed his fingers together. Bang! Yi Xian's green profound sword was clamped, and Yunmengzi was about to exert force when Yi Xian suddenly let go of the green profound sword. In an instant, a wave of blood-red sword light enveloped him and Yunmengzi. Bang! The sword light tore through the air. But in the next moment, an extremely terrifying and powerful force suddenly erupted from the battlefield. Rumble. Yi Xian retreated over 1 kilometer away with his sword. Yunmengzi, who stood before Yi Xian, was completely unharmed. Seeing this, Nakayama of Silla and Invakil's faces immediately darkened. Right at this moment, Yunmengzi suddenly smiled and said, "Come, let me see if you can really ignore space and time." As soon as he finished speaking, he took a step forward and gently waved his right hand at Yi Xian. Ka-cha! In an instant, the space and time that Yi Xian was in began to crack like glass. What a strange space-time power. Yi Xian just stood there without moving, letting the space-time he was in crack layer by layer. Not long after, Yi Xian was already in a mysterious space-time black hole, and this space-time black hole was still annihilating bit by bit, but Yi Xian was completely fine. The smile on Dreamcloud's face gradually vanished when he witnessed this scene, and it was replaced by a gloomy expression. At this moment, he was a little shocked. The guy in front of him was actually able to ignore the power of time and space that he had used. Was this guy really just in the Heartless Realm? A question flashed through Dreamcloud's mind. Right at this moment, Yi Xian took a step forward, and he'd left the space-time abyss. In the next moment, a blood-red ray of light appeared between Dreamcloud's brows. However, it was stopped by a shield of clouds. So, the green profound sword returned to Yi Xian's grasp. Dreamcloud gazed at Yi Xian, and then he flicked his sleeve. In an instant, the clouds in the surroundings suddenly seethed. In the next moment, all the clouds actually converged together and transformed into a cloud dragon that was over 3 kilometers long. The cloud dragon roared as it soared through the sky, and then it instantly dove down towards Yi Xian. Bang! In an instant, the entire heavens and the earth seethed. Yi Xian raised his head to look at the enormous dragon, and then he slowly closed his eyes. In an instant, countless wisps of blood energy in the surroundings suddenly converged towards him, and in next to no time, an enormous blood-red dragon that was over 10 kilometers long appeared above him. The enormous blood-red dragon raised its head and roared furiously before it shot into the sky. Twin dragons collided head-on. Rumble. An explosion that sounded like a thunderclap resounded in the sky, and then the two enormous dragons exploded apart. The heavens and the earth dimmed down while countless strands of space were obliterated. Nakayama of Silla's expression changed drastically when he witnessed this scene. Laws. Invakil's expression was extremely solemn as well. The battle between Yi Xian and Dreamcloud's son had destroyed this expanse of space, and this meant that the laws left behind by Jun Daolin were about to appear. As expected, as the space in the surroundings was obliterated, a terrifying pressure suddenly appeared above them, and then 2 bolts of blood-red divine lightning appeared above them. The energy of the laws. Dreamcloud's son glanced at the 2 bolts of divine lightning and chuckled. If you were here in person, then I would be 70% afraid of you. But if it's only the energy of the laws. Meanwhile, one of the bolts of divine lightning shot directly towards him. Dreamcloud's son opened his palm, and then he gently guided it upwards. In an instant, countless clouds converged in front of him. Bang! When the blood-colored divine lightning entered the clouds, the entire cloud layer began to seethe. But in the next moment, the cloud layer actually imprisoned the lightning. Nakayama of Silla spoke in a low voice when he witnessed this scene, as expected of the person who was closest to the ancestor. As he spoke, a trace of worry flashed through his eyes as he gazed at Yi Xian who was in the distance. Dreamcloud's strength was absolutely not something that Zhong Shou, Xiao Xiao, and the others could compare to. If the person behind Yi Xian didn't show up, then they would absolutely be unable to stop him. But now, the person behind Yi Xian had no intention of showing up. Actually, he was slightly annoyed. Damn it, is there no one behind this fellow? In the distance, Yi Xian was locked onto by a bolt of divine lightning as well. When the other bolt of divine lightning attacked Dreamcloud's son, it shot towards Yi Xian as well. As for Yi Xian, he didn't go head-on against it, and he directly entered the mysterious abyss of space and time. As soon as he entered that mysterious expanse of space and time, the bolt of divine lightning was stunned. I can't find him. Dreamcloud's son frowned slightly when he saw the bolt of divine lightning stop on the spot. It seems like it can't sense Yi Xian. Right at this moment, the bolt of divine lightning suddenly turned around and shot towards Dreamcloud's son. Since it couldn't sense Yi Xian, then it had to find a target, right? Otherwise, it would have come here for nothing. Moreover, Dreamcloud's son just happened to have violated the laws, so he was the perfect target. Dreamcloud's son's face instantly turned gloomy when he saw the bolt of divine lightning shooting towards him. He came looking for me because he couldn't sense Yi Xian? It didn't cause much harm, but it was extremely insulting. Elmar's expression was terrifyingly gloomy. When the bolt of divine lightning arrived in front of him, he suddenly took a step forward, and then he suddenly smashed his fist forward. An expanse of light surged out from his fist like an erupting volcano. Rumble. The bolt of divine lightning blasted his fist onto the spot it was standing on. Right at this moment, Dreamcloud's son's pupils constricted because a sword had arrived at the center of his forehead. Dreamcloud's son didn't dare act carelessly, and he swiftly raised his left arm to block it. Bang! An expanse of blood-red light erupted, and Dreamcloud's son was pushed over 100 m back. As soon as he stopped moving, his entire body fell into a mysterious spatial abyss. Dreamcloud's son glanced at the surroundings, and he frowned slightly. This spatial abyss. He hadn't even finished speaking when a ray of light suddenly stabbed towards him. A wisp of viciousness flashed through Dreamcloud's son's eyes, and then he suddenly clenched his right fist and smashed it forward. Bang! The mysterious spatial abyss started seething, and his punch had forcefully stopped Yi Xian's sword. Yi Xian's sword had missed, so he immediately retreated. However, the green profound sword in his hand suddenly flew out while he was retreating. Within the spatial abyss, Dreamcloud's son's eyes narrowed slightly as he raised his right arm to block. Bang! The green profound sword was directly blocked flying. Meanwhile, Dreamcloud's son suddenly spoke fiercely. You actually used a spatial abyss to trap me? How laughable. Watch me shatter your spatial abyss. As soon as he finished speaking, he suddenly smashed his fist forward. Rumble. The spatial abyss started seething, but it didn't shatter. Dreamcloud's son frowned slightly when he witnessed this scene, and then he smashed his fist forward once more. Bang! The entire mysterious expanse of space trembled violently. However, it still didn't shatter. Dreamcloud's son's expression was slightly unsightly. He was unwilling to give up, and he smashed his fist a few more times. For a time, the entire mysterious expanse of space shook violently like an earthquake. However, no matter how Dreamcloud's son attacked it, it showed no signs of shattering. A short moment later, Dreamcloud's son came to an understanding. He was utterly unable to shatter this mysterious expanse of space. When he thought up to here, Dreamcloud's son gazed at Yi Xian in the distance. Yi Xian, do you still have any trump cards? Yi Xian lightly waved the green profound sword in his hand, and he didn't speak. At this moment, his aura was still rising explosively. Even though he was only at the unheart realm, his aura wasn't inferior to Dreamcloud's son at all. It was the boost from the energy of his bloodline. Most importantly, Yi Xian hadn't suffered any backlash. Dreamcloud's son gazed at Yi Xian, and then his body suddenly became illusory. In an instant, countless afterimages suddenly appeared in the heavens and the earth, and these afterimages were like a storm that shot violently towards Yi Xian in the distance. In the distance, Yi Xian didn't choose to continue attacking. He raised the green profound sword in his right hand, and in the blink of an eye, the green profound sword transformed into a sword shield that blocked in front of him. Rumble. In an instant, numerous explosions resounded incessantly in the heavens and the earth. As these explosions resounded, Yi Xian retreated repeatedly, and he retreated for over 100 kilometers. Moreover, when the afterimages vanished, Yi Xian was still there. However, it wasn't easy for him this time, and a wisp of blood slowly seeped out from the corner of his mouth. In the distance, Dreamcloud's son's expression gradually became solemn. He hadn't imagined that Yi Xian would actually be able to resist this attack of his. Dreamcloud's son didn't give it any further thought, and he suddenly rose slowly into the air. In the air, he opened his right palm, and then the space above him split apart. In an instant, a blood-red bolt of lightning shot out from within, and it descended into his palm. As soon as it appeared, the heavens and the earth and the surroundings instantly became illusory. This place couldn't endure the might of the blood-red bolt of lightning at all. In the shadows, Nakayama of Scylla and Dreamcloud's expressions had become extremely solemn, and they exchanged glances while their eyes were filled with astonishment. In the distance, Yi Xian had stopped as well. He held the green profound sword tightly in his right hand, and he seemed to have sensed danger. Meanwhile, Dreamcloud's son suddenly spoke fiercely, Yi Xian, let me see exactly how strong your sword is. As soon as he finished speaking, he suddenly tossed it forward. Hiss! The blood-red bolt of lightning shot down violently from the sky. Bang! In an instant, the space in an area of a few million kilometers started burning. Chapter 1982. Along with the appearance of the blood-red divine lightning, Nakayama of Scylla and Invicil who were hiding in the shadows retreated explosively. Danger. That was what they felt at this moment. Merely the pressure it emanated caused them to feel the aura of death. In the distance, Yi Xian raised his head slowly. He opened his palm, and the green profound sword in his hand suddenly trembled violently before transforming into a sword shield that blocked in front of him. He blocked it head-on. In next to no time, the blood-red divine lightning blasted onto the sword shield. Bang! A deafening explosion suddenly resounded. Rumble. Yi Xian instantly retreated over 300 kilometers away. The sword shield was fine, but Yi Xian's entire body had actually split open, and a copious amount of blood surged out. Moreover, the blood-red divine lightning actually didn't vanish. Moreover, it had transformed into a human face. The blood-red face suddenly laughed gloomily. That's a good sword. Dreamcloud, you have to give it to me. Dreamcloud spoke indifferently. If you're able to kill him, then this sword is yours. The blood-red face roared with laughter. Remember what you said. As soon as it finished speaking, it suddenly vanished on the spot. Bang! Everywhere the divine lightning passed, space was instantly incinerated and obliterated. The terrifying energy contained within it wasn't something space could endure. In the distance, Yi Xian wiped off the blood on the corners of his mouth, and he held the green profound sword tightly in his right hand. In the next moment, he charged forward and stabbed with his sword. It was a head-on collision. The green profound sword stabbed directly onto the divine lightning. At the same time, an expanse of sword light enveloped the divine lightning. Bang! Another explosion resounded like a clap of thunder. In the blink of an eye. Rumble. An expanse of sword light was obliterated. Yi Xian retreated explosively over 30 kilometers away, and he just stopped when the face suddenly appeared in front of him. Yi Xian suddenly drew his sword and slashed. Hiss. The blood-red sword light slashed down and tore everything apart. Bang! The sword light shattered, and Yi Xian retreated explosively for over 10 kilometers again. The faces of Nakayama of Scylla and Invicil instantly sank when they witnessed this scene. What exactly is the origin of this divine lightning? It was actually so terrifying. In the distance, the blood-colored face did not follow up with another attack. It stopped and smiled. This sword formation is interesting. It can actually withstand my special power. Cloud Dream Z suddenly smiled and said, Nether Realm. This person is not simple. He might have an inactive realm expert behind him. Yu Jing smiled and said, an inactive realm expert? Forget about this place. Even in the alternate world, there were not many inaction realm elites. There are currently only 9 peerless realm elites in the other world, but I know all of them, so. As he spoke, he looked at Yi Xian. The person behind him is definitely not an inaction realm elite. Even if he is, I'm afraid he's only at the false boundless realm. Pseudo-limitless stage. Hearing this, Yun Mengzi became silent. The truth was that the pseudo-novelist level was infinitely close to the nothingness level. His half-step nothingness level was actually a bit overstated. Limitless realm. Since ancient times, only a handful of people had been able to reach this level. Meanwhile, Nether Realm smiled and said, so what if he has an inactive realm expert behind him? Isn't my master an inaction realm elite as well? Ha. Cloud Dream Z glanced at Nether Realm and smiled. Of course. As he spoke, he glanced at Yi Xian in the distance. Do you need help? Nether Realm looked at Yi Xian in the distance and laughed. No need. Just wait and see. Isn't this person a swordsman? Let me defeat him with my sword. As he spoke, he suddenly turned into a sword. The next moment, he turned into a blood-colored sword light and shot out. Pust. In an instant, the space in his path shattered and was annihilated. Sword. In the distance, Yi Xian suddenly looked up. His right hand held the azure profound sword tightly and was about to attack. However, when the sword arrived in front of him, he suddenly put away the azure profound sword. Seeing this, Cloud Dream Z's expression changed. He wanted to stop Nether Realm, but it was too late. Nether realms sank into the center of Yi Xian's forehead. Boom! Yi Xian's figure trembled violently while an extremely terrifying aura swept out from within him. Nakayama of Scylla and Invicil were stunned when they witnessed this scene. Is he dead? But it didn't take long for them to notice that Yi Xian wasn't dead. Moreover, Yi Xian's aura was rising madly. Both of them exchanged glances, and their eyes were filled with shock. Cloud Dream Z stared fixedly at Yi Xian in the distance, and his eyes were filled with disbelief. Meanwhile, a furious howl suddenly resounded from within Shen Shi's body. How audacious! How dare you devour me? Devour! Everyone was stunned when they heard Yu Jing. Yi Xian is devouring Yu Jing. Meanwhile, Yu Jing's voice resounded once more. Cloud Dream Z, hurry up and save me. Cloud Dream Z pondered deeply for a moment, and then he vanished on the spot. Yi Xian suddenly raised his head and slashed down with his sword. Bang! An expanse of blood-red light erupted, and then Cloud Dream Z was blasted over 1 kilometer away. Nakayama of Scylla's face fell when he witnessed this scene. Cloud Dream Z is intentionally refusing to save Yu Jing. Invicil nodded. Obviously, Cloud Dream Z wants Yi Xian to devour Yu Jing. But what's his objective in doing this? Nakayama of Scylla laughed coldly. Isn't it simple? He wants to form enmity between Yi Xian and the power behind Yu Xian. Or perhaps, he wants to use the power behind Yu Xian to deal with Yi Xian. Invicil spoke in a low voice. So, he sensed danger from Yi Xian? Nakayama of Scylla laughed bitterly. So long as he isn't blind, then he should be aware that there's definitely an inactive realm expert behind Yi Xian. If this fellow doesn't have such an expert backing him, then how could he possibly be so heaven-defying? Whether it's his bloodline or that sword, they aren't things that an ordinary person should possess. Invicil nodded, and then he glanced at Cloud Dream Z. This fellow is very sinister. Nakayama of Scylla spoke indifferently. How could someone who has come this far be an idiot? In the distance, Yi Xian's aura rose explosively. Within him, Yu Xian roared madly, lowly creature, how dare you devour me? Do you know who I am? Yi Xian didn't even care about Yu Jing, and he continued devouring. Yu Xian roared madly. At this moment, Xiao Ta's voice suddenly resounded from within Yi Xian's body. Stop shouting. You're stupid, yet you insist on becoming a sword. Who can you blame? Yu Xian said angrily, who are you? Xiao Ta spoke indifferently, I am Destiny's Tower. The number 1 tower in the universe. Under 3 swords, I'm invincible. Above 3 swords, I can change. At this point, it didn't continue. Yu Xian said angrily, what stupid tower? Hurry up and make him stop. If I die here, my master won't let him go. Xiao Ta said indifferently, what? Do you want to fight for a backer? Yu Xian said fiercely, I don't want to talk nonsense with you. If you don't stop him, when my master comes down, you'll all die. Shut up. Xiao Ta suddenly said angrily, it's not easy for the young master to stop relying on his father and sister. You bastard, you want to use a backer again. Ah. Yu Xian suddenly roared, lowly creature, stop. The voice slowly weakened. Outside, Cloud Dream Z looked at Yi Xian, but he didn't do anything. He just looked at Yi Xian, and no one knew what he was thinking. In the distance, Yu Xian was still roaring, but at this moment, his voice was getting weaker. On the contrary, Yi Xian's aura was getting stronger. Combined with his original bloodline aura, his aura was no weaker than Cloud Dream Z's. Gradually, Yu Xian's voice became as soft as a mosquito. Before long, his voice disappeared completely. Boom! An extremely terrifying aura suddenly erupted from Yi Xian's body. As this aura erupted, the surrounding space-time boiled. In the distance, Cloud Dream Z narrowed his eyes and clenched his right hand slowly, but he didn't make a move. At this moment, Yi Xian suddenly opened his eyes. The moment he opened his eyes, his realm went from the heartless realm to the thoughtless realm. However, it wasn't over yet. His aura was still growing. Before long, he went from the thoughtless realm to the corporeal realm. He went up 2 realms in a row. At this moment, Cloud Dream Z slowly retreated. Upon seeing this scene, Nakayama of Silla frowned slightly. Did this guy want to escape? Suddenly, Cloud Dream Z disappeared from his spot. As soon as Cloud Dream Z disappeared, the spacetime above Yi Xian's head trembled slightly. At this moment, the entire Tao critical spacetime was boiling. It was the entire Tao critical spacetime. For a time, countless experts from the Tao world turned to look in Yunjie's direction, and their eyes were filled with terror. Is an inaction realm expert about to appear? In the darkness, Nakayama of Silla looked up at the sky above Yi Xian, and his expression was extremely unsightly. This aura isn't at the half-step inaction realm at all. An inaction realm expert. It didn't take long for a phantom to appear in the sky. As soon as it appeared, the entire Tao critical spacetime started boiling, and then it started to fade. When he saw this, Nakayama of Silla's expression changed drastically. Is he going to destroy the entire Tao critical spacetime? Right at this moment, a blood-red cloud suddenly appeared in the distant sky, and then a bolt of blood-red lightning condensed from within the cloud in the next moment. The laws left behind by Jun Daolin had appeared once more. Meanwhile, the phantom in the sky gradually condensed, and it didn't take long for a middle-aged man to appear in the sky. The middle-aged man wore a white robe and held a horsetail whisk in his right hand. He seemed very sage-like. It wasn't his main body. But even then, his aura was at least a few dozen times stronger than Cloud Dream Z. It really was like the difference between the heavens and the earth. As soon as the middle-aged man appeared, the bolt of blood-red lightning suddenly vanished on the spot. The middle-aged man remained expressionless as he waved the horsetail whisk in his hand. Bang! An explosion resounded, and then the bolt of blood-red lightning was instantly obliterated. At the same time, it vanished as well. The middle-aged man gazed at Yi Xian with a completely expressionless face. You devoured the nether realm. Yi Xian didn't speak, and he just held his sword tightly. The middle-aged man didn't speak as well. He just waved the horsetail whisk in his hand, and then Yi Xian wasn't even able to react before he was blasted over 3 kilometers away. Moreover, the middle-aged man had appeared in front of him before he could even stop himself. At this moment, Yi Xian's body was actually gone. The middle-aged man was about to attack when Xiao Ta suddenly appeared in front of Yi Xian. You're too much of a bully. You hit the young, and the old came. How can you bully others like this? The middle-aged man looked at Xiao Ta. We're bullying you. You're not happy? Xiao Ta laughed. I wanted to keep a low profile, but now it seems that I can no longer keep a low profile. The middle-aged man nodded slightly. Come. Attack. Xiao Ta said disdainfully, you're not worthy for me to attack. I want to call for help. The middle-aged man, Xiao Ta, suddenly trembled. After a moment, he suddenly said, Master. I'm calling for you. Hurry up and come out. After a moment, there was no movement at all. Xiao Ta hesitated for a moment, and then said, Master. I'm calling for you. There was still no movement at all. Xiao Ta couldn't help but curse, Motherf asterisk cur, are you not giving me any face? Everyone. P.S. Will you forgive me? Chapter 1983. Xiao Ta was in a slightly awkward situation. This master is actually ignoring me. How can I get out of this situation now? As if he'd thought of something, Xiao Ta turned around and glanced at Yi Xian, and he was slightly helpless. Young master, are you really his biological son? Yi Xian was speechless. Meanwhile, the middle-aged man before Xiao Ta spoke abruptly, I'm waiting for you to call for help. Xiao Ta flared up with rage when he heard this, and he gazed at the middle-aged man and spoke furiously, my young master has a sword. Do you dare to touch it? As he spoke, Yi Xian cooperated and opened his palm, and the green profound sword floated slowly towards the middle-aged man. He would carry the burden when he should, and he would absolutely not carry the burden when he shouldn't. The middle-aged man gazed silently at the green profound sword. Xiao Ta laughed coldly. What? You don't dare? This sword was forged by the #1 expert in the entire universe, Big Sister Tianming. Do you dare to touch it? The middle-aged man gazed at Xiao Ta, and a wisp of disdain arose on the corners of his mouth. The #1 expert in the entire universe? How laughable. As he spoke, he suddenly grabbed the green profound sword with his right hand. Bang! A strand of terrifying and formidable force suddenly erupted from the green profound sword, but it was instantly suppressed by the middle-aged man in the next moment. The middle-aged man's face was emotionless. Let me see who you are. As soon as he finished speaking, he slowly closed his eyes. At the same time, the green profound sword started to tremble slightly. Xiao Ta instantly heaved a sigh of relief when he witnessed this scene. I, Xiao Ta, like confident people like you. Yi Xian stood silently at the side. Xiao Ta couldn't help but turn around to glance at Yi Xian. He hesitated for a moment before he said, Young master, have you gone mad? Yi Xian was speechless. Meanwhile, the middle-aged man suddenly raised his head and gazed into the depths of the boundless starry sky. A short moment later, his pupils constricted. Hiss! A sword had suddenly stabbed into the middle-aged man's forehead. Bang! In an instant, the middle-aged man's body had become ethereal. The middle-aged man's eyes were filled with disbelief. This, however, this was not the end. In an unknown world far away, on a mountain peak that towered into the clouds, a sword appeared without any prior signs. As the sword appeared, a middle-aged man who sat cross-legged on the mountain peak suddenly raised his head, and a hint of hostility flashed in his eyes. How dare you? As soon as he finished speaking, he opened his palm, and a golden mark suddenly floated up slowly from his palm. At the instant that the golden mark floated up, countless strange golden talismans suddenly appeared in the surroundings, and they suddenly released countless beams of golden light that converged into the golden mark. In the next moment, the golden mark shot into the sky and blasted towards the sword. The sword fell straight down. When the sword pierced the golden mark disappeared without a trace. Seeing this, the middle-aged man's pupils constricted. How? Before he could finish his sentence, the sword pierced through his head. Boom! The middle-aged man's body immediately became illusory. The sword suddenly turned into a ray of sword light and disappeared into the boundless horizon. The middle-aged man looked at the horizon in the distance, and his eyes were filled with confusion. Killing the clone, shattering the main body, as soon as he finished speaking, his body disappeared without a trace. Dead. As the middle-aged man disappeared, everyone in the other world was dumbfounded. An inanimate realm expert had died? He died just like that? Whose sword did that belong to? All the experts in the other world were dumbfounded. Before long, an old man appeared where the middle-aged man had died. He looked in front of him with an extremely solemn expression. At this moment, a woman in a red dress suddenly appeared not far away from the old man, and her expression was extremely solemn as well. Both of them were inanimate realm experts. The old man suddenly said softly, "Who is it?" His voice carried a trace of confusion. The woman in the red dress fell silent. Ha! At this moment, loud laughter suddenly sounded from afar. The two of them turned around and saw a middle-aged man in a white robe walking over slowly from afar. The old man narrowed his eyes slightly. Jun Daolin, what are you laughing at? Jun Daolin laughed loudly. We've been searching for a breakthrough our entire lives, but the 9 of us have cultivated for tens of millions of years, and none of us has been able to reach a higher level. Today, we can see an expert above inanimate realm in action. Shouldn't we be happy? The old man and the woman in the red dress fell silent. Happy. Just as Jun Daolin had said, the 9 of them had been stuck in the Anika realm for a few tens of millions of years, and they hadn't been able to take another step forward. There were many times when they even wondered if the Anika realm was the end of the martial Tao. But now, that sword told them that inanimate realm was not the end. The old man and the woman in the red dress suddenly laughed. Hope. At this moment, hope suddenly rose in their hearts. Inanimate realm was not the end of martial arts, which meant that they had a goal and motivation to strive for. The woman in the red dress suddenly looked at Jun Daolin. Jun Daolin, do you know who did that? Jun Daolin laughed, I don't know. The woman in the red dress glanced at Jun Daolin and did not ask anything else. But her instincts told her that Jun Daolin knew. Meanwhile, another woman walked over from afar. It was Dao Ling. Dao Ling smiled, I never expected that Qi Di would actually perish just like that. Qi Di was the middle-aged man who'd been killed earlier. The woman in the red dress gazed at Dao Ling. Dao Ling, do you know who did it? Dao Ling blinked, I don't. The woman in the red dress frowned slightly, and then she glanced at Dao Ling and Jun Daolin, both of you definitely know. Jun Daolin smiled, Hong Lian, don't worry about who it was. Actually, you should be asking why that person killed Qi Di. Hong Lian was about to speak when the old man spoke abruptly, no matter what the reason is, old man, choose to keep a low profile after today. Farewell. As soon as he finished speaking, he turned around and left. Jun Daolin glanced at the old man and smiled, that old geezer Mo Ku is really interesting. As expected of someone who's lived the longest. Mo Ku might not be the strongest amongst the 9 of them, but he was definitely the one who'd lived the longest. Hong Lian glanced at Dao Ling and Jun Daolin, and then she turned around and left. Only Dao Ling and Jun Daolin remained here. Dao Ling spoke softly, I never expected her to be so strong. Jun Daolin smiled, you know her? Dao Ling nodded, my clone that I left at Dao border has seen her. At that time, my clone was instantly killed as well. Jun Daolin's smile gradually disappeared. The Scarlet Earth doppelganger went to Daobi to kill that young man called Yi Xian. As he spoke, he looked at Dao Ling, it was the person behind Yi Xian who killed him. Dao Ling nodded. Jun Daolin fell silent. Actually, the reason they didn't hide it from each other was because they were in an alliance. It wasn't possible to fight one-on-one here. It was very difficult to kill a person in a one-on-one battle, but it was different if it was 2-on-1. Thus, basically everyone would form an alliance here and have a teammate. The 2 of them came from the same place, so it was logical for them to form an alliance. At this moment, Jun Daolin shook his head and sighed, that Qi Di died in such a sullen way. He didn't even see the other person. Dao Ling smiled and said, that little guy might come here soon. Jun Daolin looked at Dao Ling, are you familiar with him? Dao Ling's lips curled up slightly, he recognized me as his sister. Jun Daolin's expression froze, and after a moment, he gave a thumbs up, awesome. Dao Ling laughed out loud. Dao border. As the middle-aged man disappeared completely, Xiao Ta heaved a sigh of relief, Sister Tianming is still the most reliable. As if thinking of something, Xiao Ta suddenly turned around and looked at Yi Xian. The middle-aged man's soul wasn't erased, but absorbed by the Qingxian sword. To be precise, it was the middle-aged man's soul that was absorbed by the Qingxian sword that was controlled by Yi Xian. At this moment, Xiao Ta was completely sure that Yi Xian was awake. Of course, he didn't dare to ask, nor did he dare to expose him. This young master wasn't a kind person. If he was naughty now, he might be beaten up by him pretending to be crazy. And for nothing. In the dark, Nakayama of Scylla and Invicil were extremely excited. They made their move. The big boss behind Yi Xian finally made his move. And the other party directly erased the clone of the inanimate realm expert. He was undoubtedly an inanimate realm expert. Invicil suddenly said with a trembling voice, we won the bet. Nakayama of Scylla laughed, of course. As if thinking of something, he frowned slightly, be careful of one person. Hearing this, Invicil also frowned. Yunmengzi. Ever since the inanimate realm expert appeared, this guy completely disappeared. At this moment, Nakayama of Silla said, now, he probably won't dare to show himself and target young Master Yi. But he might play dirty in the dark. At this point, he seemed to have thought of something and shook his head with a smile. With young Master Ye's wit, he probably won't be afraid of him playing dirty. Invakil smiled faintly. That's true. In the distance, the green profound sword in front of Yi Xian suddenly trembled violently. The next moment, an extremely terrifying aura erupted from the green profound sword. As the aura appeared, the time and space around the green profound sword began to boil. Before long, the boiling time and space began to disappear bit by bit. When they saw this, Nakayama of Silla and Invakil's expressions became extremely solemn. The sword was about to break through. The sword had already devoured the souls of too many experts, and just now, it devoured the clone of an inanimate realm expert. Now, it was finally about to break through. Not far away from the green profound sword, Yi Xian stood quietly. The power of his bloodline was still boiling, but he did not go around killing people. Regarding this, Small Pagoda was extremely curious. After the young master activated his bloodline, he was completely different from his master. At this moment, Yi Xian suddenly looked up. He opened his palm, and the green profound sword appeared in his hand. Boom! The green profound sword and Yi Xian erupted with a terrifying aura at the same time. They broke through together. Chapter 1984. He'd broken through. Yi Xian had attained the soulless realm. Moreover, his aura was rising explosively. Moreover, the aura of the green profound sword was rising explosively as well. It didn't take long for Yi Xian to attain the Taoless realm from the soulless realm. Once he attained the Taoless realm, he'd started to suppress himself. Of course, it was impossible for him to attain the Taoless realm from the Taoless realm. After a long time, Yi Xian's aura gradually calmed down. At this moment, he opened his eyes slowly. The moment he opened his eyes, the space and time in front of him turned into a sea of blood. Nakayama of Silla and Invakil exchanged glances when they witnessed this scene, and there was a trace of shock in their eyes. Nakayama of Silla spoke softly, this fellow has risen to the Taoless realm from a single battle. Coupled with his invincible bloodline and sword, he'll definitely be the #1 expert beneath the Taoless realm from now on. The #1 expert beneath the Taoless realm. Yi Xian hadn't attained the Taoless realm, but he'd already been able to go head-on against an extraordinary expert like Yunmengzi. Now that he'd attained the Taoless realm, who else could be a match for him besides Taoless realm experts? Suddenly, the blood-red color in Yi Xian's eyes gradually vanished, and it didn't take long for the blood-red space around him to return to normal as well. Yi Xian opened his palm, and the green profound sword appeared in his hand. The corners of his mouth curled up slightly as he gazed at the sword in his hand. Xiao Ta suddenly said, young master, you've returned to normal. Yi Xian smiled, yes. Xiao Ta hesitated for a moment before he said, young master, why were you able to maintain your consciousness after activating your bloodline? Yi Xian fell silent. Actually, he didn't know the answer as well. After he fully activated his bloodline, he hadn't completely lost all reason as he usually would. He'd entered an extremely profound state, and he was slightly unable to control himself while in that state. However, his mind felt very clear. It was like he'd drunk alcohol. He was clearly drunk. However, his mind was still clear. He didn't know why he was like that. Could it be that his bloodline was mutating? Thinking of this, Yi Xian shook his head and stopped thinking about this question. In any case, this was a good thing. When he met his father in the future, he could ask him about it. At this time, Nakayama of Silla and Invakil appeared in front of Yi Xian. Nakayama of Silla looked at Yi Xian and said with a smile, congratulations, little friend. Yi Xian smiled and said, I, Yi Xian, will never forget the two seniors' kindness of helping me. Nakayama of Silla hesitated, then said, this. Yi Xian smiled and asked, what's wrong? Nakayama of Silla chuckled. It's like this, my young friend. Our goal in life is to reach the boundless realm, but unfortunately, our talent is limited. I'm afraid it's impossible for us to reach the boundless realm on our own. So, he knew very well that unforgettable memories were all fake. Especially this slippery guy, he might forget about it the moment he turned around. He had to get the benefits first. Hearing Nakayama of Silla's words, Yi Xian was speechless. This guy wanted Dao Ling's inheritance. He didn't refuse. With a point of his finger, 2 rays of white light directly entered Nakayama of Silla and Invakil's forehead. Boom! Boom! Nakayama of Silla and Invakil's bodies trembled slightly. After a moment, Nakayama of Silla opened his eyes. He looked at Yi Xian and bowed slightly. Thank you, little friend. Dao Ling's inheritance. Yi Xian smiled and said, whether you can reach the boundless realm or not depends on yourselves. Nakayama of Silla smiled and said, understood. Although they had Dao Ling's inheritance, as Yi Xian said, whether they could reach the boundless realm or not depended on themselves. It didn't mean that they would definitely be able to reach the boundless realm after obtaining the inheritance. Yi Xian smiled and said, seniors, I still have some things to take care of. Another day. I'll visit again. Nakayama of Silla smiled and said, little friend, please wait. Saying so, he took out a storage ring and handed it to Yi Xian. Yi Xian was a little surprised. This is? Nakayama of Silla smiled and said, young Master Yi, this is some divine vein crystals that we plundered from Yunjia and the law enforcement sect. It should be helpful to young Master Yi. Yi Xian glanced at the mustard seed ring and took it right away. Then he said with a smile, seniors, goodbye. Saying so, he turned into a sword light and disappeared into the distant horizon. After Yi Xian left, Invakil said softly, Yunjia is gone. The law enforcement sect is also gone. Saying so, the corners of his mouth curled up slightly. Nakayama of Silla laughed. Now, the entire Daolin nation belongs to you and me. Saying so, he looked at Invakil. Invakil, what do you plan to do next? Invakil thought for a moment and then said, I'll listen to you. Nakayama of Silla. After Yi Xian left, he directly used the green profound sword to travel back to Azure State. In the palace. Tuoba Yen suddenly looked up. When she saw Yi Xian, the corners of her mouth curled up slightly. Yi Xian walked to Tuoba Yen and said with a smile, I was delayed by some things. Tuoba Yen shook her head slightly. It's good that you're back. Saying so, she slowly hugged Yi Xian's waist and buried her head in Yi Xian's chest. Without saying a word, she gently hugged Yi Xian. In fact, how could she not be worried during this period of time? Yi Xian gently stroked Tuoba Yan's long hair and said softly, how have you been recently? Tuoba Yan suddenly looked up at Yi Xian. Oh no. Yi Xian was stunned. Tuoba Yan said in a deep voice, a mysterious force has appeared in Azure State. This force has been searching for young women like crazy. Now, the entire Azure State is in a state of panic. Yi Xian frowned slightly. Mysterious force? Tuoba Yan nodded. This force is called Heaven Sect. They appeared half a month ago. As for their origins, I've sent people to investigate, but they couldn't find anything. Yi Xian was about to speak when he suddenly turned to look outside the hall. In the distant sky above the hall, an aura suddenly appeared. The next moment, an old man in Daoist robes slowly descended. Tuoba Yen said in a deep voice, they're here. Outside the hall, countless soldiers swarmed over. Tuoba Yen suddenly waved his right hand, and the soldiers immediately retreated. At this moment, the old man in Daoist robes walked into the hall. He looked at Tuoba Yen and smiled. Country King Tuoba is indeed a smart man. Tuoba Yen smiled. From Heaven Sect? The old man in Daoist robes smiled. Old man, Heaven Sect's Grand Elder, Shaoqi Country King Tuoba, I won't waste any more time. I've come for one thing, and that is my Heaven sect master wants to take you as a concubine. Take a concubine. Yi Xian was stunned. The next moment, he looked at the old man in Taoist robes, and the corners of his mouth curled up slightly. Not only was Tuoba Yen not angered by the Taoist-robed old man's words, he even smiled. She glanced at Yi Xian and then at the old man in Taoist robes. Take me as a concubine? The old man in Taoist robes nodded. Yes. Tuoba Yen blinked. Do you know whose woman I am? The old man in Taoist robes frowned slightly. You have a man? Tuoba Yen nodded and pointed at Yi Xian. He's my man. The old man in Taoist robes glanced at Yi Xian and said with a smile, isn't that simple? He's dead. You don't have one, do you? As he spoke, he flicked his sleeves and sent a blast of energy towards Yi Xian. When the blast of energy arrived in front of Yi Xian, it disappeared without a trace. The old man in Taoist robes frowned slightly when he saw that. Young master, you do have some skill. Yi Xian was speechless. The old man in Taoist robes sneered. He suddenly threw a punch, and a fist print tore through the air towards Yi Xian. However, when the fist print arrived before Yi Xian, it vanished without a trace. The old man in Taoist robes narrowed his eyes. How did you do that? Yi Xian spread his hands. I didn't do anything. The old man in Taoist robes' expression gradually turned cold. Are you going to pretend in front of me? Yi Xian was speechless. The old man in Taoist robes suddenly roared furiously. The next moment, his right hand grabbed at Yi Xian from afar. This grab caused the space where Yi Xian was to start tearing. Space tearing, not space-time tearing. The space around Yi Xian was torn apart, but he was completely fine. A trace of disbelief flashed across the old man's eyes. You. How did you do that? Yi Xian was somewhat innocent. I didn't do anything. The old man in Taoist robes stared at Yi Xian. Are you at the primordial realm? Primordial realm? Yi Xian was stunned. What's the primordial realm? The old man in Taoist robes said in a deep voice, you don't even know the primordial realm of the five-dimensional universe? The five-dimensional universe. Sister Nian's universe. Yi Xian was somewhat speechless. Damn it. There are too many realms. I actually can't even remember them. I wonder which idiot did this. How embarrassing. Meanwhile, the old man in Taoist robes suddenly spoke in a deep voice. Who are you? Yi Xian looked at the old man in Taoist robes. He hesitated for a moment before he said, Yi Xian. Have you heard of me? The old man in Taoist robes frowned slightly. Yi Xian? Yi Xian nodded. The old man in Taoist robes pondered deeply for a moment before he said, I've never heard of you. Yi Xian flared up with rage. Damn it. You're from the five-dimensional universe, yet you've actually never heard of me, Yi Xian? Meanwhile, the old man suddenly vanished on the spot. In the next moment, an afterimage flashed by. Yi Xian looked in front of him, and a powerful force shot towards his face. Yi Xian blocked it with his arm. Bang! Along with a muffled explosion, the old man was blasted out of the hall. As soon as he stopped moving, his body shattered into pieces. Moreover, even his soul had become almost translucent. Yi Xian was quite speechless when he witnessed this scene. He really hadn't exerted any strength in that instant, and he'd merely blocked it for a moment. However, he hadn't expected that the old man would actually be weak to such an extent that his body had shattered with just a light touch. Tuoba Yen glanced at Yi Xian, and he was extremely shocked. She knew that Yi Xian was very strong, but she didn't know exactly how strong Yi Xian was. At this moment, a casual action from Yi Xian had actually almost destroyed the old man's soul. The old man in Taoist robes outside the hall was completely stunned. What's wrong with me? Where's my body? A short while later, he finally returned to his senses. He gazed at Yi Xian and spoke resentfully, "Just you wait." As he spoke, he opened his palm, and then a cloud arrow suddenly shot into the sky and shot into the clouds. "Call for help." Yi Xian blinked and then laughed. "Come, call as you wish. I'm invincible, so do as you wish." Xiao Ta. P.S. Recently, both adults and children have caught a cold, and children have caught a cold. They can't sleep, and they keep throwing a tantrum, causing both of us to be unable to sleep. Most importantly, both of us have caught a cold as well. So, sorry for the late update yesterday. Because I only slept at 4 or 5 yesterday. Sorry again. Chapter 1985. I'm invincible, so do whatever you want. Tuoba Yen was slightly stunned by Yi Xian's words, and then she grinned. There was adoration and a trace of adoration in her eyes as she gazed at Yi Xian. This little man of the past had become unfathomable. The black-robed old man was first stunned when he heard Yi Xian, and then he roared with laughter. His laughter rumbled through the sky. Yi Xian gazed at the black-robed old man and smiled silently. Meanwhile, the black-robed old man suddenly pointed a finger at Yi Xian. "You're invincible? You actually dare to say such absurd words? This old man has never seen such a thick skin on your face." Yi Xian was speechless. Meanwhile, a few dozen figures suddenly appeared in the horizon. The black-robed old man was overjoyed when he saw the figures. "They're here." As soon as he finished speaking, a few dozen figures had appeared within the palace, and they were led by a middle-aged man. The middle-aged man had his hands behind his back, and there was a dignified air between his brows. The black-robed old man hurriedly said, "Sect Master." "The sect master of the heavenly sect, Mulong." Mulong glanced at the black-robed old man, and his eyes instantly narrowed when he noticed that only his soul remained. He gazed at Yi Xian. "You did this?" Yi Xian smiled, "Yes." Mulong gazed at Yi Xian. "Do you know that he's a member of my heavenly sect?" Yi Xian smiled, "I do." Mulong clenched his right fist, and then he suddenly charged forward and slammed his fist at Yi Xian. Space was torn apart. He who attacked first had the advantage. When Mulong's fist arrived over 10 inches away from Yi Xian, an invisible force suddenly obstructed him. Mulong was stunned, and then he was horrified. He was about to retreat, but a powerful force pushed him over 1 kilometer back. Moreover, his body had been obliterated when he stopped moving. The experts of the heavenly sect were stunned by this scene. His body is gone. Their invincible sect master's physical body was gone. At this moment, the black-robed old man seemed to have lost his soul. His soul retreated rapidly as if he'd seen a ghost. Tuoba Yen held Yi Xian's hand lightly and said softly, "You've actually become so formidable." Yi Xian blinked. "Not only am I powerful in the day, but I'm even more powerful at night." Tuoba Yen was slightly taken aback. In the next moment, she came back to her senses and rolled her eyes at Yi Xian. Her cheeks blushed and she looked extremely beautiful. Yi Xian laughed and wrapped his left arm around Tuoba Yan's waist. In the distance, the curtains suddenly said with a trembling voice, "Why, you're a legendary primordial realm expert." Yi Xian smiled and said, "No." Mu Lang glared at Yi Xian. A moment later, he roared, "Invite the ancestor." As soon as he finished speaking, he opened his palm, and a token suddenly flew out from his hand. In the next moment, the token shot into the clouds. Boom! The clouds in the sky began to boil. Yi Xian rubbed his nose, somewhat speechless. At this moment, Tuoba Yen said softly, "They're summoning the ancestor." Seeing the worry in Tuoba Yan's eyes, Yi Xian smiled and said, "Don't be afraid. Your man is invincible in this place." Tuoba Yen blinked. "What about other places?" Yi Xian laughed. "I'm invincible in other places too." In any case, bragging was not against the law. So what if he bragged a little? At this moment, an old man suddenly appeared in the clouds. Seeing this old man, Mu Lang hurriedly bowed deeply. Greetings, Ancestral Master. Ancestral Master. Behind Mu Lang, the heavenly sect experts all knelt and bowed. After the old man appeared, he looked around expressionlessly. What a weak world. With that, he looked down at Mu Lang. What's the matter? Mu Lang pointed at Yi Xian in the distance. Ancestral Master, this person wants to destroy my heavenly sect. The old man looked at Yi Xian. When he saw Yi Xian, he frowned slightly. Why does he look so familiar? Familiar. Yi Xian smiled. I once stayed in the five-dimensional universe. Five-dimensional universe. The old man frowned. As he looked at Yi Xian, he felt that Yi Xian looked more and more familiar. At this moment, Mu Lang hurriedly said, Ancestral Master, this person not only wants to destroy my heavenly sect, but also looks down on you. Ancestral Master, please kill this person. The old man ignored Mu Lang. He looked at Yi Xian again. What's your surname? Yi Xian smiled. Yi. Yi, the old man frowned slightly. After pondering for a moment, his pupils suddenly shrank. He said in a trembling voice, Your Excellency is Yi Xian, young Master Yi? Yi Xian laughed. You know me? Hearing Yi Xian's words, the old man's body trembled. Then, in front of everyone's eyes, his legs softened and he directly knelt down. The experts of the heavenly sect were stunned. What's going on? The old man's face was deathly pale. His eyes were filled with fear. Yi. Young Master Yi. I didn't know it was young Master Yi. I offended young Master Yi, please forgive me. After saying that, he continuously kowtowed. Seeing this scene, the experts of the heavenly sect were petrified. Young Master Yi? Who is this young Master Yi? Why have we never heard of him? Yi Xian looked at the kneeling old man and smiled. You know me? The old man nodded and said in a trembling voice, Young Master Yi once protected the entire five-dimensional universe. Who doesn't know him? In the five-dimensional universe, there were two guardian gods. One was the five-dimensional Tendo Mu Nian, and the other was Yi Xian young Master Yi. At this moment, the old man's fear reached its peak. At this time, Yi Xian suddenly said, Why don't I know you? The old man smiled bitterly. It's normal that young Master Yi doesn't know me. I'm just a nobody. I've never seen young Master Yi in person, only his statue. After saying that, he hurriedly kowtowed. Young Master Yi, my disciples don't know young Master Yi. They offended young Master Yi. Please forgive them. Yi Xian laughed. Forgive them? I thought you were a smart person. But it seems I was wrong. If they offended me, I'm a good-tempered person and won't bother with them. But they offended my woman, and you want me to let them go? Interesting. Hearing this, the old man's expression changed. He hurriedly said, Young Master Yi, I'll kill them now. After saying that, he suddenly turned around and slapped out with his palm. Boom! Before Mu Lang and the others could react, they were directly erased. After killing Mu Lang and the others, the old man said, Young Master Yi, from this moment on, I will disband the heavenly sect. Yi Xian suddenly waved his hand. Boom! The old man was directly erased. Mercy? He wouldn't be merciful. From another perspective, if he didn't have the strength, then what would have happened to Tuoba Yen today? Being merciful to one's enemy was extremely stupid. Meanwhile, a few people suddenly rushed over from afar. Yi Xian was slightly stunned when he saw these people. He knew all of them. It was Imo Yunqi and the others. Jianghu was here as well. Jianghu was still dressed in battle armor, and he seemed valiant and formidable. Imo Yunqi was the first to rush over when he saw Yi Xian. He roared with laughter and said, Bandit Yi, I thought you died outside. As he spoke, he hugged Yi Xian tightly. Yi Xian smiled and said, "My life is tough." Mo Yinchi roared with laughter. "I know your life is tough, and ordinary people can't kill you at all." Yi Xian said seriously, "Nonsense. Someone who can kill me hasn't even been born yet." Mo Yinchi's expression froze. In the next moment, he shook his head. "Your skin has thickened again." Yi Xian roared with laughter. In the next period of time, everyone gathered together. Mo Yinchi and Bai Zai were drunk, but Yi Xian wasn't. He arrived outside the hall, and Tuoba Yen was sitting before the stone steps. Yi Xian walked over to Tuoba Yan's side, and Tuoba Yen asked softly, "You're leaving?" Yi Xian nodded. Tuoba Yen didn't speak. Yi Xian opened his palm, and a wisp of sword chi entered Tuoba Yan's body. "This sword chi will remain in your body. As long as the opponent's strength doesn't surpass mine, you can use this sword chi to instantly kill them. This sword chi won't disappear." Tuoba Yen nodded slightly. "All right." Yi Xian opened his palm, and a spatial ring appeared before Tuoba Yen. There are some divine supreme crystals and some cultivation techniques in this spatial ring. Cultivate according to them, and your strength will increase greatly. Tuoba Yen smiled. "Anything else?" Yi Xian shook his head. "No." Tuoba Yen put away the spatial ring. She said softly, "Let's go." Yi Xian hesitated for a moment, and then said, "I'll be going then." Tuoba Yen wanted to say something but hesitated. At this moment, Yi Xian vanished. Tuoba Yen was slightly taken aback when she saw Yi Xian vanish. She looked at the distant horizon, and her gaze gradually became infatuated. After an unknown period of time, Tuoba Yen retracted her gaze, and her expression dimmed. At this moment, a sword chi suddenly landed in front of Tuoba Yen. In the next moment, the sword chi dispersed, and Yi Xian appeared before Tuoba Yen. Tuoba Yen was stunned. The corners of Yi Xian's mouth curled up slightly. "I'm not leaving tonight." Tuoba Yen suddenly hugged Yi Xian, and said in a trembling voice, "Kiss me." Yi Xian, that night, it was an ecstasy. The next day. Early in the morning, a sword chi shot into the sky from the imperial palace. In the blink of an eye, the sword chi disappeared into the horizon. In a certain hall, Tuoba Yen suddenly opened her eyes on the bed. She turned to look, and when she saw that Yi Xian had disappeared, she fell silent for a moment, and then smiled. A moment later, Tuoba Yen got up, but as soon as her feet touched the ground, her legs went limp, and she almost fell. In a large hall, Mo Yinchi sat up. He shook his head, and the alcohol immediately disappeared. He turned to the side and saw Bai Zai lying like a dead pig nearby. Mo Yinchi shook his head. He was about to call out to Bai Zai when Bai Zai suddenly opened his eyes and sat up. He looked into the distance. "Gone?" Mo Yinchi nodded. "Yes." Bai Zai nodded slightly. "Then let's go." With that, he got up and left. But soon, he opened his palm, and there was a spatial ring in his palm. He was stunned when he saw the spatial ring. Mo Yinchi also opened his palm, and there was also a spatial ring in his palm. Obviously, they were left behind by Yi Xian. Mo Yinchi and Bai Zai exchanged glances, and Mo Yinchi shook his head with a smile. This guy. Chapter 1986. After leaving the Qingzhou province, Yi Xian arrived at the fifth dimension. At this time, the fifth dimension was very prosperous. Not only that, the fifth dimension was in a unified state. Fifth Dimension Alliance. This was a force established by Yi Xian. Now, although Yi Xian was not here, this force had become the #1 force in the fifth dimension. And the main people in charge of this fifth dimension alliance were Guan Yin, Yi Jiming, High Priest Mu, and the others who had followed Yi Xian in the past. Fifth Dimension Hall. In front of the hall, there were two statues. One of them was of the fifth dimension Tendo Mu Nianyan and the other was of Yi Xian. If not for Mu Nianyan and Yi Xian, the entire fifth dimension would have disappeared. Yi Xian was not only the leader of the fifth dimension alliance, but also the protector of the fifth dimension. Fifth dimension city. The current fifth dimension city could be said to be the largest and most prosperous city in the fifth dimension. After Yi Xian left, under the leadership of Amu, Guan Yin, and the others, the fifth dimension city expanded by more than 10 times. Inside the city, there were forces from all over the fifth dimension. On this day, a man walked into the fifth dimension city. This man was Yi Xian. He did not directly go to find Guan Yin and the others. He wanted to see the current fifth dimension first. He naturally did not forget about the fifth dimension. In the past, he had promised Sister Nian that as long as he, Yi Xian, was here, he would always protect the fifth dimension. After entering the fifth dimension city, a feeling of vastness spontaneously arose. Compared to before, the current fifth dimension city was much, much bigger. Just the width of the street was more than 300 zhang. The street was bustling with people coming and going. It was very lively. On both sides of the street, there were many shops. Inside the shops, the shop assistants were shouting with all their might. On the road, Yi Xian smiled. Here, he could feel the life of the human world. In a place like the Dao boundary realm, there was no such feeling. That was because the people there all pursued the great Dao and longevity. In that kind of place, there was only cultivation, plundering, and being plundered. In the five-dimensional universe, the majority of people only pursued survival. Actually, this was pretty good. Yi Xian collected his thoughts and continued forward. After a while, Yi Xian felt a little bored. He had been waiting for someone to recognize him, but no one recognized him along the way. There was a statue of him outside the city. Why didn't these people recognize him? Moreover, the security in this city couldn't be better. Along the way, he didn't even meet a single bad guy. Damn it. If there were no bad guys, how could he act cool? A hero saving a damsel in distress would be good too. After walking for a while, there was still no one who recognized him, nor were there any bullies taking liberties with innocent girls. Yi Xian felt a little bored. Just as he was about to look for Guan Yin and Yi Jiming, a sudden noise came from afar. Yi Xian's eyes lit up, and he hurriedly walked over. Yi Xian came to the front of a shop. This shop was very big, it could be said to be the biggest shop in the vicinity. It could accommodate hundreds of people. At this moment, there were already people gathered around the shop. There were some antiques displayed in the shop. At this moment, a young man was facing a woman. The young man wore a luxurious robe and held a folding fan in his hand. One look and it was obvious that he was not an ordinary person. The woman opposite him wore a simple white dress. She had delicate features and a trace of arrogance on her face. The young man's face was a little gloomy. Wu Ling, I saw this item first. Wu Ling said calmly, you think it's yours? You saw it first, but I paid first. The young man's face became gloomy. Wu Ling, don't think that just because you're from the Wu clan, you can pester endlessly. Wu Ling said calmly, Guan Jing, others might be afraid of your spirit of Yin clan, but my Wu clan isn't. At the side, the shop owner was in a difficult position. These two people were not people he could offend. At this moment, Guan Jing suddenly said, Wu Ling, I'm telling you, this item is mine. Wu Ling's lips curled into a disdainful smile. With just you? Do you think that just because you're from Lady Guan Yin's clan, my Wu clan will be afraid of you? Guan Jing said calmly, isn't the reason you're so arrogant because you're from the Wu clan's high priest's clan? Hearing the two people's words, Yi Xian frowned. Although the fifth dimension was very prosperous and peaceful, there were still many problems in the dark. After all, the fifth dimension alliance didn't just have the human race, there were many other races. These races were all in the fifth dimension alliance, so there would definitely be conflicts of all sizes. At this moment, Wu Ling looked at the shop owner. Who are you selling it to? Guanjing looked at the shop owner as well. The shop owner instantly smiled bitterly. He couldn't afford to offend these two people. At this moment, Yi Xian suddenly walked out. He glanced at Guanjing and Wu Ling, before looking at the shop owner. Who saw this item first? The shop owner hesitated for a moment before saying, both of you saw it. Yi Xian smiled. There's always a first come, first served rule, right? The shop owner glanced at Yi Xian before sighing in a low voice. Young master, don't get involved in this matter. Yi Xian was about to speak when Wu Ling suddenly looked at Yi Xian. Who are you? Yi Xian looked at Wu Ling, and smiled. From your conversation just now, I found out that the person who saw this item first was this young master Guanjing, right? Wu Ling stared at Yi Xian. He saw it first, but I paid first. Yi Xian looked at the item that the two people were fighting over. It was a black piece of metal. He picked it up and sized it up. In his eyes, it was trash, but in a place like the fifth dimension, it was still pretty good. Yi Xian thought for a moment before opening his palms. Two swords appeared in his hands. With a thought, the two swords floated in front of Guanjing and Wu Ling. The two of you don't need to fight over this piece of metal. I'll give you a sword. The quality of this sword is definitely above this piece of metal. What do you think? The shop owner looked deeply at Yi Xian. Soon, he frowned. Why did this person look so familiar? Guanjing glanced at the sword before him, hesitated for a moment, and then said, Brother, I don't want this sword, and I don't want that piece of metal as well. Obviously, he'd noticed how extraordinary Yi Xian was. Yi Xian grinned. It's fine. I'll give it to you. Just keep it. Guanjing hesitated for a moment before he said, Thank you. As he spoke, he put his sword away. Yi Xian gazed at Wu Ling. Wu Ling gazed at Yi Xian and laughed coldly. Why should I give you face? Who do you think you are? Yi Xian frowned when he heard this. Meanwhile, Wu Ling flicked Yi Xian's sword away. Moreover, she even swept the piece of metal away. She walked over to stand before Yi Xian and looked Yi Xian in the eyes. Why are you frowning? Are you displeased? Yi Xian smiled and said, I've finally noticed. You're looking for trouble on purpose. Wu Ling smiled and said, I'm looking for trouble on purpose. What? Do you want to hit me? Yi Xian suddenly raised his hand and slapped her. Slap. Everyone hadn't even recovered from their shock when Wu Ling was slapped to the street. Everyone was stunned. Hit. Wu Ling is a member of the Wu clan. Why does the Wu clan need anyone? The high priest of the Wu clan, Mu, is the managing elder of the Fifth Dimension Alliance, and his authority is monstrous. Guanjing glanced at Yi Xian with a trace of curiosity and vigilance in his eyes. Meanwhile, the owner said with a trembling voice, Young master, you. She's from the Wu clan. Yi Xian said indifferently, What about the Wu clan? The owner smiled bitterly. Young master, do you know the high priest of the Wu clan, Mu? Yi Xian said with a smile, Of course I do. The owner hesitated for a moment before saying, Then do you know that the high priest is an elder of our Fifth Dimension Alliance, and his authority is monstrous? After saying this, he paused and said, Most importantly, the protector of our Fifth Dimension, Alliance Master Yi, is the high priest's shaman attendant. Yi Xian was speechless. At this moment, Wu Ling suddenly said with resentment, You dare to hit me. Yi Xian looked at Wu Ling and was about to say something when the sound of hooves came from the distance. In the next instant, the crowd on both sides of the street dispersed, and soon, more than 50 cavalrymen wearing black armor rushed over. Seeing this, the owner next to Yi Xian said with a trembling voice, Young master, these are the Wu clan cavalrymen. Wu clan cavalrymen. At this moment, the group of cavalrymen rushed to the front of the shop, and the leader was a young man. When he saw the red and swollen handprint on Wu Ling's face, his expression immediately became sinister. Ah! Who did this? His voice was like the roar of a wild beast. Wu Ling stood up and pointed at Yi Xian, saying resentfully, "Elder brother, it was this human, this lowly human." Lowly human? Yi Xian frowned slightly. The Wu clan young man looked at Yi Xian. "You did this?" Yi Xian nodded slightly. "Yes." Killing intent flashed in the eyes of the Wu clan young man. "Who gave you the guts?" As soon as he finished speaking, he suddenly dashed forward and threw a punch at Yi Xian. However, this punch missed. This was because Yi Xian had already retreated several meters away. Seeing this, Guanjing's eyes flashed with shock. This Wu clan young man's strength was at the origin realm. After his punch missed, the Wu clan young man was slightly stunned. He looked at Yi Xian and narrowed his eyes. "Who are you?" Yi Xian was about to speak when the Wu clan young man suddenly said fiercely, "No matter who you are, if you dare to touch a member of my Wu clan will annihilate your entire family." As soon as he finished speaking, he dashed forward again and threw a punch at Yi Xian. This punch was even faster than before, and it was even more powerful. However, just as he punched, a hand directly slapped his face. "Pa!" With the crisp sound of a slap, the young man was sent flying. Everyone was dumbfounded. Yi Xian looked at the Wu clan young man. Just as he was about to speak, the young man suddenly roared, "Kill! Kill him!" After saying this, the Wu clan cavalryman beside him directly charged at Yi Xian. Seeing this, Yi Xian's eyes gradually became cold. Chapter 1987. When the cavalrymen were about to arrive in front of Yi Xian, a strange scene appeared abruptly. The cavalrymen seemed as if they'd been frozen on the spot. At the same time, every single one of their arms flew into the air. In an instant, countless strands of blood sprayed out, and it was an extremely bloody scene. Everyone in the surroundings was astounded when they witnessed this scene. Guanjing gazed at Yi Xian with disbelief, and his figure was trembling. At this moment, the owner of the shop was astounded to the extreme as well, and cold sweat ceaselessly flowed down his face. On the other hand, Wu Ling was petrified on the spot. Yi Xian gazed at the young man from the Wu clan who was similarly astounded. "You want to annihilate my entire clan?" The young man from the Wu clan stared fixedly at Yi Xian. "Who exactly are you?" Yi Xian smiled and said, "Do you know why I haven't killed you?" The young man from the Wu clan suddenly opened his palm, and then a shaman command token suddenly shot into the sky. He was calling for help. Yi Xian shook his head and smiled when he witnessed this scene. "Do you really not recognize me?" The young man from the Wu clan stared at Yi Xian, and then he frowned after a short moment. Why does he feel slightly familiar? Right at this moment, the horizon in the distance suddenly trembled violently. In the next moment, an old man strode through the air towards them. An expert from the Wu clan. The young man from the Wu clan was instantly overjoyed when he saw the old man, and he hurriedly said, "Grand Elder." The Grand Elder of the Wu clan. After the Grand Elder of the Wu clan arrived here, his expression instantly turned gloomy when he saw the severed arms of those cavalrymen from the Wu clan. He gazed at Yi Xian, and he instantly seemed as if he'd been struck by lightning when he saw Yi Xian, and his mind went blank. The young man from the Wu clan was just about to speak when the Wu clan's Grand Elder suddenly turned around and slapped him. Slap. The spectators watched as the young man from the Wu clan's body was directly blasted into pieces. Everyone was stunned. What was going on? Guanjing looked at Yi Xian, and as he watched, he seemed to have thought of something. His pupils constricted, and his body started to tremble violently. Soon, he took out a voice transmission talisman and crushed it. It wasn't just Guanjing. The shop owner had also noticed something. He crushed a sound-transmitting talisman to inform the owner behind him. Some of the spectators in the surroundings who were originally watching the show immediately withdrew their transmission talismans and crushed them. Not long after, the entire fifth dimension city flared up. Countless powerful auras soared into the sky from all directions, then rushed towards a certain direction. Fifth dimensional hall. Guan Yin suddenly put down the scroll in her hand. In the next moment, her pupils constricted abruptly. Then, she crushed the scroll in her hand, stood up, and walked out of the hall. Everyone in the hall was dumbfounded. But very quickly, everyone seemed to have received some sort of message. They immediately put down all the official duties in their hands and rushed out of the hall. That man was back. The Wu clan. Mu, who was dealing with official duties, suddenly stopped. In the next moment, she raised her head, and in the blink of an eye, she had already disappeared from the hall. Not long after, countless experts of the Wu clan soared into the sky, heading straight towards a certain direction. On the other side. In a certain courtyard, Yi Jiming put down the ancient book in her hand. After a moment of silence, she faintly smiled. He's back. On the street. The young man whose body was crushed by the great elder of the Wu clan was stunned. He looked at the great elder of the Wu clan, his eyes filled with disbelief. Great elder, the great elder of the Wu clan suddenly roared, "Shut up! Kneel! Kneel!" The young man of the Wu clan was stunned, then said, "Why?" The great elder of the Wu clan flew into a rage. "If you don't kneel, this old man will beat you to death." The young man of the Wu clan trembled. At this moment, Wu Ling'er hurriedly walked in front of the young man of the Wu clan. She forced the young man to kneel, and she also knelt down. Not only did she kneel, but she also buried her head in the ground, her whole body trembling. She was extremely afraid. Obviously, she had already discovered Yi Xian's identity. At this moment, the experts of the Wu clan who had lost an arm also knelt down. Not only them, but the people around them also knelt down. The guardian of the 5 dimensions. The great elder of the Wu clan walked in front of Yi Xian. He was about to kneel down, but a force held him back. Yi Xian smiled. "Great elder, I trust you have been well since we last met." The great elder of the Wu clan smiled bitterly. "Lord Shaman's attendant, I never thought that we would meet in this way. This old. I am ashamed." Shaman's attendant. Hearing the words of the great elder of the Wu clan, the young man of the Wu clan understood at this moment. He looked at Yi Xian, and his whole person was stunned. Shaman's attendant. This was the shaman's attendant of the high priest, and also the shaman's attendant of the entire Wu clan. The entire reason why the entire Wu clan had its current glory was all because of this man. The strongest shaman's attendant in the history of the Wu clan. The shaman's attendant whose status was even higher than that of the patriarch of the Wu clan and the high priest. Yi Xian said softly, "I am a little disappointed." Disappointed. Hearing this, the great elder of the Wu clan's heart trembled. He wanted to kneel down again, but Yi Xian did not let him. Yi Xian smiled. "These problems are not just the problems of the Wu clan. We will slowly change them later." The great elder of the Wu clan hurriedly said, "All right." At this time, a woman suddenly appeared in front of Yi Xian. This person was Guan Yin. Seeing Yi Xian, Guan Yin glared at him. "You still know to come back." Yi Xian had left for far too long. Yi Xian smiled. The 5-dimensional universe has changed a lot. As he said this, he glanced at the powerful figures of the 5-dimensional union standing behind Guan Yin. "You have all done very well." Hearing this, these people hurriedly gave a slight bow. Many of them had never seen Yi Xian before, because some of them had only recently entered the 5-dimensional union. Even so, there was no one who did not respect Yi Xian. At this time, the high priest of the Wu clan appeared with the experts of the Wu clan. As they saw Yi Xian, the experts of the Wu clan promptly knelt down one after another. "Greetings, shaman's attendant." Shaman's attendant. Yi Xian looked at Mu and faintly smiled. "My high priest." High priest. Mu walked in front of Yi Xian and faintly smiled. "You've returned?" Yi Xian nodded. Amu looked at the experts of the Wu clan who had lost their arms. After a moment of silence, she said, "I will give you an explanation." Before coming, she had already known the ins and outs of the matter. Yi Xian looked at the experts of the Wu clan and smiled. The five-dimensional universe is better than before, but there are still some problems. However, these problems shouldn't be too big, right? Amu smiled, of course. Yi Xian laughed, let's change places. He discovered that there were already many people gathered in this place. It was truly a sea of people. Guan Yin suddenly smiled, aren't you going to greet everyone? Yi Xian laughed and floated in the air. When he was in the air, he discovered that everyone in the city was looking at him. Yi Xian. Guardian God. Some people were still unfamiliar with Yi Xian because Yi Xian had been away for too long. At this moment, Yi Xian suddenly smiled, hello, everyone. Everyone looked at Yi Xian. Yi Xian thought for a moment. Then, he opened his palm and casually waved it. In an instant, countless heavenly jades fell from the sky. Heavenly jades. These things weren't of much use to him anymore. However, there were close to 1 billion of them in his body. He directly took out 100 million and sprinkled them. When everyone received the heavenly jades, the whole city instantly boiled over. These heavenly jades weren't of much use to Yi Xian. However, for the people of the fifth dimension, they were definitely extremely rare. Instantly, countless people knelt down. Thank you, Alliance Leader Yi. Their voices were like thunder, shaking the sky. In the sky, Yi Xian smiled. He returned to the ground and glanced at the crowd. Then, he waved his right hand and everyone disappeared. When they reappeared, they were already in the fifth dimension hall. Inside the hall, all the people of the fifth dimension alliance had arrived. The people here could be said to be the most powerful and influential people in the fifth dimension. Yi Xian looked at the crowd and then said with a smile, just now, a small dispute occurred on the street. It wasn't a big matter, but I discovered some contradictions. I think everyone here should know about these contradictions. After saying that, he paused a bit before continuing, I know that wherever there are people, there will be contradictions. Especially since our fifth dimension is a big family. There are many races in this big family. Between different races, it's impossible for us to be of one mind. Everyone listened in silence, and no one spoke. In fact, everyone here represented a group or a family. Yi Xian continued, as for how to solve this problem, all of you should solve it yourselves. I'm just bringing it up. When they heard Yi Xian, Amu and Guan Yin rolled their eyes at Yi Xian. This fellow, he was too thorough in taking over the reins of power. Meanwhile, Yi Xian said with a smile, I brought a gift for all of you this time. As he spoke, he opened his palm, and a few dozen spatial rings appeared. Everyone in the hall was visibly moved when they saw these spatial rings. They were extremely envious of the heavenly jades that Yi Xian had taken out just now. Yi Xian glanced at them and said with a smile, there are some inheritances and heavenly jades in these spatial rings. These are sufficient to make all of you and the forces behind you stronger. As for how strong, I can only say that it will completely change the strength of our fifth dimension. Everyone's eyes burned with desire when they heard this. At this moment, Yi Xian continued, I don't have much desire for power, and I don't like to manage things. However, I will continue to be the leader of the fifth dimension. My request is very simple. I hope that the fifth dimension will be fine. I don't want anyone to cause trouble and destroy the unity of the fifth dimension. No one is allowed. As he spoke, he looked at Amu and said, not even the Wu clan. He knew that because of him, the Wu clan was slightly special in the fifth dimension. It was also because of this that some members of the Wu clan were slightly arrogant and despotic. Amu nodded. My Wu clan will change. Yi Xian said with a smile, let the youngsters of the Wu clan focus their attention on the outside world. The outside world is very, very big. Everyone should focus their attention on the outside world as well. At this moment, one of them suddenly asked, Alliance Leader Yi, how strong are you now? Everyone looked at Yi Xian curiously. Yi Xian laughed, don't ask. If you ask, then you're invincible. Haha. Everyone. Chapter 1988. Invincible. Hearing Yi Xian's words, all the experts of the fifth dimension in the hall looked at each other. Everyone was extremely shocked. An hour later, everyone left, leaving only Guan Yin and Amu in the hall. Yi Xian opened his palm and 2 storage rings flew in front of the 2 women. The 2 women looked at Yi Xian but did not take the 2 storage rings. Yi Xian said, the highest realm in the universe that I have come into contact with is the limitless realm. In other words, there are no realms. There are many inheritances in these storage rings, including the limitless realm's inheritances, as well as enough resources for you to cultivate to the limitless realm. Saying this, he smiled. Now, you can slowly hand over the authority in your hands. Of course, you have to give it to someone you can trust. The 2 women were silent. Yi Xian smiled. What's wrong? Guan Yin smiled. We will cultivate well. However, we like this place very much and do not want to leave. Amu nodded. My clansmen are here. I also do not want to leave. Yi Xian laughed. I am not asking you to leave. I just don't want you to delay your cultivation for the 5th dimension. Guan Yin suddenly said, are you going to leave? Yi Xian nodded. Guan Yin was silent for a moment before asking, will you come back? Yi Xian smiled. Definitely. Qingzhou and the 5th dimension were places that he would never forget. Guan Yin smiled. We will wait for you here. Also, the position of 5th dimension alliance leader will always be yours. Don't refuse. Other than you, no one can convince the masses. As Guan Yin had said, there were too many races in the 5th dimension. If there was no super expert to oversee the 5th dimension, the 5th dimension would fall into chaos. And Yi Xian happened to be a suitable candidate because he had once saved the 5th dimension. Yi Xian smiled. I will not refuse the position of alliance leader. However, I still need you to govern the 5th dimension. Guan Yin rolled his eyes at Yi Xian. I knew you would say that. Yi Xian laughed. After a while, Yi Xian said, let's talk about 2 important things. First, you have to look further ahead. As he spoke, he told them about the Sky sect in the Azure province. After Yi Xian finished speaking, Guan Yin and Amu's expressions turned cold. Guan Yin said solemnly, don't worry, this won't happen again. Yi Xian nodded. The second thing is what happened just now. I found that there is still hostility between the clans, especially the Wu clan. As he spoke, he looked at Amu. Amu, you have to restrain the Wu clan. Amu nodded. I will. Yi Xian smiled. I have told you what I should. I have to go. The 2 women hurriedly got up. Amu hesitated for a while before saying, you don't want to stay for a few more days? Yi Xian smiled. There is still a long way to go. I have to speed up. Previously, when he thought that Limitless was already close to Qing, he felt that he was about to catch up to Qing's footsteps. But the cruel reality told him that Limitless was still a little brother in front of Qing. He still had a long way to go. After a while, Yi Xian left. Amu looked at Yi Xian's disappearing figure in the distance. No one knew what he was thinking about. Guan Yin smiled. He will come back. Amu nodded slightly. I know. I just don't know how long it will take for him to come back. Guan Yin smiled. I think he will come back often in the future. Amu looked at Guan Yin. Why? Guan Yin smiled. Because I can feel that he has feelings for you. Amu shook her head. Nonsense. Guan Yin laughed. Can't you feel it yourself? Amu did not say anything. Guan Yin continued. There is something he cares about here. He will definitely come back. Just you wait. Amu turned to look at the sky outside the hall. After a long time, a smile appeared on her face. After Yi Xian left the hall, he did not immediately leave the fifth dimension. Instead, he came to a courtyard. There was a woman sitting in the courtyard. Yi Jiming. Seeing Yi Xian, Yi Jiming smiled. What are you doing here? Yi Xian walked in front of Yi Jiming. I'm here to meet an old friend. Hearing this, the corners of Yi Jiming's mouth lifted. Yi Xian sat in front of Yi Jiming. How have you been? Yi Jiming smiled. I've been studying Taoist scriptures every day. I've completely understood them. Yi Xian blinked. Are you interested in studying something else? Yi Jiming smiled. Let me see. Yi Xian opened his palm. A ray of white light directly entered Yi Jiming's forehead. Moments later, the smile on her face gradually disappeared. In its place was a solemn expression. After a long time, Yi Jiming looked at Yi Xian. Amazing. Yi Xian took out a storage ring and placed it in front of Yi Jiming. This is enough for you to cultivate for a long time. Cultivate well. I hope that the next time we meet, you will have reached the inaction realm. With that, he stood up and was about to leave. Yi Jiming suddenly asked, why? Yi Xian was taken aback. Then, he smiled. Why what? Yi Jiming waved the storage ring in his hand. Why are you giving me this? Yi Xian smiled. Back then, we depended on each other for a long time. You can't have forgotten, right? Yi Jiming fell silent. Yi Xian smiled. Jiming, we will meet again. With that, he turned into a sword light and disappeared into the horizon. Yi Jiming looked at the sword light in the horizon and remained silent for a long time. Yi Xian came to a starry sky. This was where Sister Nian used to stay. Sister Nian. Yi Xian looked around and smiled. He had to admit that he missed Sister Nian. Yi Xian took another look at his surroundings. Just as he was about to leave on his sword, a giant cloud ship suddenly appeared in the distance. No. It wasn't a cloud ship. It looked like a starship. However, there was something different about it. On the starship, Yi Xian saw 3 words, Milky Way Sect. Milky Way Sect? Yi Xian was stunned. 9th. The first thing he thought of was that anti-human 9th. At this moment, Yi Xian suddenly showed up in front of the starship. A strong force shrouded him as soon as he showed up. Then a laser was shot at him directly. Yi Xian flicked his sleeves. Boom! The laser was instantly annihilated. At this moment, a woman suddenly flew out of the starship. Yi Xian's face darkened when he saw her. It really was 9th. He didn't expect to meet 9th here. 9th was slightly stunned when she saw Yi Xian. Then she smiled. It's you. Yi Xian walked to 9th. 9th, why are you here? 9th smiled. I'm exploring the universe with the students of the Milky Way sect. Yi Xian frowned. Students of the Milky Way sect? 9th turned around and pointed at the starship in the distance. Yi Xian followed her finger and looked over. He saw some students on the starship. There were both men and women among them, and they were dressed strangely. It was too similar to Arya's style of dress. At this moment, a middle-aged man showed up next to Jiao. The middle-aged man was wearing an outfit that Yi Xian had never seen before. He was also wearing a weird hat. There were a few stars on the middle-aged man's shoulder. Yi Xian had no idea what they meant. The middle-aged man glanced at Yi Xian and said, Miss 9th, who is this? 9th smiled. He's your young sect master. Young sect master? The middle-aged man was slightly stunned. Meanwhile, 9th looked at Yi Xian. Activate your bloodline. Yi Xian hesitated for a moment before he activated the power of his bloodline. Bang! The middle-aged man was slightly stunned when he activated the mad demon bloodline. In the next moment, he stood at attention and saluted. Milky Way Sect's chief instructor, Xiao Xian, greets the young sect master. Chief instructor. In the Milky Way sect, his status was so high that it was only inferior to Yang Lianshuang and a few others. Xiao Xian's salute caused Yi Xian to be slightly stunned. He hesitated for a moment before he said, "There's no need to be so polite." Xiao Xian was slightly excited. "I never expected to see the young sect master here." As he spoke, he turned around to look at all the students on the starship. "All of you brats, quickly greet the young sect master." Young sect master. Actually, the person with the highest prestige in the Milky Way sect was Yi Xian's father, the man in green clothes. Besides Yang Lianshuang, practically no one from the Milky Way sect had seen the man in green clothes. However, all the members of the Milky Way sect respected the man in green clothes like a god. Because if it wasn't for the man in green clothes, the Milky Way sect wouldn't exist. Actually, the man in green clothes hadn't done much. It was Arya and Little White who had helped Yang Lianshuang establish the Milky Way sect. Actually, the two little fellows hadn't done much. However, they'd contributed money. Not only had they brought a large number of mysterious cultivation techniques to the Milky Way galaxy, but they'd also changed the spiritual energy and environment of the Milky Way galaxy, making the entire Milky Way galaxy suitable for cultivation. The two little fellows had directly changed the fate of the entire Milky Way galaxy. And the two little fellows had done it in the name of the man in green clothes. And Yang Lianshuang was also clear that if the Milky Way sect wanted to walk out of the Milky Way galaxy, they had to find a powerful backer. The man in green clothes was the perfect candidate. Therefore, under her intentional promotion, the man in green clothes had become a godlike existence in the Milky Way galaxy. Naturally, Yi Xian had also become the young sect master. At this moment, the students on the starship had come before Yi Xian. They sized up Yi Xian curiously. One of the female students said softly, "He's so young." Yi Xian looked at the female student and smiled. "Young?" The female student hurriedly nodded. She hesitated for a moment before saying, "Young sect master, are you the legendary swordsman?" Yi Xian nodded. "Yes." The female student's eyes lit up. "Can you show us the 10,000 swords returned to origin?" Yi Xian was stunned. "The 10,000 swords returned to origin?" The female student nodded. "It's the extremely cool type where there are many swords." Yi Xian roared with laughter. With a command in his heart, hundreds of thousands of swords appeared behind him in an instant. At the same time, the entire Milky Way galaxy started trembling. The students present were petrified when they witnessed this scene. Xiao Xian's eyes opened wide, and they were filled with disbelief. Yi Xian looked at the female student and smiled. "Is it like this?" The female student gulped, and then she said, "Holy shit, Plath is awesome. Remember the people who appeared today." Chapter 1989. All the students from the Milky Way were dumbfounded. Is he even human? They've cultivated as well, and they've seen formidable cultivators. However, they've never seen such a terrifying cultivator. The dense swords could probably easily destroy the entire Milky Way. No, it wasn't afraid, it was absolutely possible. Because the entire star region was seething with excitement after the swords appeared. This meant that the star region couldn't withstand the might of the swords at all. At this moment, all the students were beyond shocked. The scene before them refreshed their understanding of the martial Tao. So a single person's strength could actually be this strong. Meanwhile, Yi Xian opened his palm, and in an instant, the swords transformed into rays of light that entered his body. All the students recovered from their shock, and there was a trace of reverence in their eyes as they looked at Yi Xian. The female student in front of Yi Xian hesitated for a moment before she said, "Young sect master, can I become a swordsman as well?" The other students looked at Yi Xian as well, and their eyes were filled with anticipation. Yi Xian looked at the female student and smiled. You want to become a swordsman? The female student nodded vigorously. Yi Xian glanced at the female student. She was wearing a tight-fitting leather suit. He had never seen such a material before. The tight-fitting leather pants accentuated the woman's perfect figure to the fullest. Because she was tall to begin with. Especially her legs, they were extraordinarily long. Not only were her legs long, but the places that should be big were extremely big as well. Amongst this group of students, the woman's appearance and figure were definitely the best. Yi Xian smiled. What's your name? The female student hurriedly replied, Feng Chaoga. Feng Chaoga. Yi Xian smiled. What an interesting name. Can you tell me why you want to become a swordsman? The female student replied directly, because you're acting cool. Yi Xian's face darkened. Xiao Xian's expression was slightly ugly as well. Silly girl, how could she say that? Can't you say it's to protect the Milky Way? No matter what, he had to make it sound more righteous. At this time, Yi Xian suddenly laughed. Everyone was slightly puzzled when they saw Yi Xian smile. After a while, Yi Xian looked at Feng Chaoga and smiled, I'll teach you. As he spoke, he opened his palm and a ray of sword aura entered Feng Chaoga's forehead. Boom! Feng Chaoga shuddered as countless pieces of information poured into her head. All the students revealed envious gazes when they witnessed this scene. Indeed, at any time, one needed to be bold and thick-skinned. Some things, if you don't ask, if you don't do it, you definitely won't have a chance. But if you do it, you definitely have a chance. Opportunities were always grasped by oneself. A few moments later, Feng Chaoga opened her eyes and looked at Yi Xian in excitement. Is this the legendary cultivation transfer? Yi Xian chuckled, I've left an inheritance within you. You can cultivate well, and it won't be long before you become the #1 swordsman in the Milky Way. The #1 swordsman in the Milky Way. Feng Chaoga's eyes lit up when she heard this. Yi Xian glanced at the students, and then he thought for a moment before he opened his palm, causing a few dozen spatial rings to float in front of them. Yi Xian smiled, take it as a greeting gift. A greeting gift. Xiao Xian immediately stood at attention, and then he bowed and shouted, thank you, young sect master. The other students returned to their senses and bowed as well. Yi Xian smiled, and then he looked at Jiao. Jiao, where are all of you going now? Jiao said, we're going back. Yi Xian was quite curious, where did all of you go just now? Jiao pointed into the distance, there's a cosmic barrier over there that we can't break through. So, we can only travel this far. However, this is enough. These little fellows have gained a lot from this trip. Meanwhile, Feng Chaoga suddenly said, young sect master. Does this swordsman need a sword? A sword. Yi Xian looked at Feng Chaoga and smiled, of course. As he spoke, he opened his palm, and a sword flew over to Feng Chaoga. Here, I'll give you a sword. Needless to say, this little girl was quite crafty. However, he didn't dislike it because he was the same kind of person. Feng Chaoga was extremely excited when she saw the sword in front of her, and she hurriedly said, thank you, young sect master. Thank you. Although the Milky Way sect's technology was very advanced, and they were able to forge some divine objects, there was still a huge gap between them and some top-notch divine objects in this universe. For example, the sword in Yi Xian's hand wasn't something that the Milky Way sect could forge right now. Xiao Xian glanced at Feng Chaoga, his eyes full of envy. At this moment, Yi Xian suddenly looked at Xiao Xian, and he smiled, you're not suitable to be a swordsman, but you're suitable to be a physical cultivator. I have many physical cultivation techniques here, do you want to cultivate them? Hearing this, Xiao Xian said excitedly, cultivation. I'll cultivate. Yi Xian smiled, and he bent his finger, and a ray of light entered Xiao Xian's eyebrows. A moment later, Xiao Xian opened his eyes, and he knelt on one knee in front of Yi Xian, and said excitedly, thank you, young sect master. Yi Xian smiled, it's no big deal." As he spoke, he gently moved his finger, and Xiao Xian was lifted up by a gentle force. At this moment, Jiao suddenly said, "Do you want to follow us to the Milky Way to play?" Hearing Jiao's words, all the students looked at Yi Xian, their eyes full of anticipation. "The Milky Way?" Yi Xian was stunned, and then said with a smile, "Is it the place where Little White and Ariel went to play?" Jiao nodded, "Yes." Yi Xian thought for a moment, and then said with a smile, "I won't go." Jiao was a little puzzled. "Why?" "It's different from here, it's very fun. Moreover, you and the sect master have never been to the Milky Way. As the sect master and young sect master, this is a bit unreasonable." Yi Xian said with a smile, "Go another day. I have some other things to deal with now." Hearing Yi Xian's words, all the students present were a little disappointed. Jiao thought for a moment, and then said with a smile, "I won't force you. Remember, if you have a chance in the future, you must come to the Milky Way to play." Yi Xian said with a smile, "Definitely." As he spoke, he turned to look into the distance. "The Milky Way is in that place, right?" Jiao nodded, "Yes." Yi Xian suddenly drew his sword and slashed. Chi! A huge rift split open in space in front of Yi Xian. Yi Xian said with a smile, "All of you can teleport through space from there, and it won't take long for you to arrive in the Milky Way. Don't be afraid of danger. With the protection of my sword, the spatial turbulence won't be a threat to all of you. However, don't do anything rash or you might enter a place like the spatial abyss." Jiao smiled, "Thank you." Yi Xian turned to look at the students. "Everyone, we'll meet again." All the students bowed respectfully. Yi Xian was about to leave when Feng Chaoga said, "Young sect master, are you the best in the way of the sword in the entire universe?" Yi Xian blinked, "What do you think?" Feng Chaoga said seriously, "I think you're invincible." Yi Xian said seriously, "I think so too." Ha! As he spoke, he flew up on his sword and vanished into the distance in the blink of an eye. Sword Doctrine Yi Xian had left. Everyone's faces turned gloomy. Meanwhile, one of the students spoke in a trembling voice, "Oh my God! Look at what young sect master gave us." They immediately opened their spatial rings to see a huge pile of heavenly crystals, and there were tens of thousands of them in each spatial ring. Spiritual stones were extremely precious in the Milky Way. Although Little White had changed the environment there, it hadn't been long, so there were very few spiritual stones there. After all, spiritual stones were condensed from spiritual energy, and it took time for them to condense. The spiritual stones that Yi Xian had given them were obviously no ordinary spiritual stones. The purity of the spiritual stones had completely exceeded their understanding. Everyone was extremely excited. It was time to change their fate. Feng Chaoga looked at the spatial ring in her hand and remained silent for a long time. After a long time, she smiled. The Milky Way's number 1 swordsman, right at this moment, number 9 suddenly frowned, and then her face fell. "Everyone, we have to rush back to the Milky Way galaxy right away." Xiao Xian looked at Jiao. "What's wrong?" Jiao said solemnly, "The Milky Way is in trouble. Let's go." With that, everyone hurriedly returned to the starship. In the next moment, the starship entered the spatial rift, and in the blink of an eye, the spatial rift closed. After parting ways with Jiao and the others, Yi Xian went straight to the 9th dimension. The Undying Emperor clan. He naturally wouldn't forget this clan. Back then, the Undying Emperor clan had almost been annihilated for him. The Undying Realm. The Undying Emperor clan had become the strongest faction in the 9th dimension. The territories that were once hostile to them had been devoured by the Undying Emperor clan. Therefore, the Undying Emperor clan's influence had expanded rapidly. In the 9th dimension, the Undying Emperor clan was invincible. Even the Tendo of the 9th dimension didn't dare to provoke the Undying Emperor clan. When Yi Xian entered the Undying Realm, a black-clothed old man suddenly appeared in front of him. He looked at Yi Xian and said, "You are?" Hearing that, Yi Xian was stunned, and then he said, "You don't know me?" At that moment, he was slightly dumbfounded. It was understandable that the people of the fifth dimension didn't know him, but this undying emperor clan didn't know him either. That didn't make sense. The black-clothed old man looked at Yi Xian and frowned. "You do look familiar." Yi Xian, at that moment, the black-clothed old man carefully sized up Yi Xian. After a moment, he hesitated, and then he said, "Can you remind me?" Yi Xian was speechless. He directly activated the Undying Emperor clan's bloodline in his body. Seeing that, the black-clothed old man was stunned. "You," Yi Xian smiled and said, "Do you recognize me?" The black-clothed old man said in a low voice, "You have my Undying Emperor clan's bloodline in your body. This proves that you are a member of my Undying Emperor clan. However, the old man has never seen you before." In other words, as he spoke, he looked at Yi Xian and said, "In other words, you are an illegitimate child." "Whose illegitimate child are you?" Hearing that, Yi Xian's expression froze, and he almost fainted. Chapter 1990. Illegitimate child? Yi Xian almost fainted on the spot. Right at this moment, a woman suddenly appeared. The old man's expression changed drastically when he saw the woman, and he hurriedly bowed respectfully, "Clan leader." Clan leader. It was the clan leader of the undead clan, Dongli Jing. Dongli Jing looked at Yi Xian. "When did you arrive?" Yi Xian smiled, "Just arrived." Dongli Jing nodded slightly, "Let's talk somewhere else." With that, she turned around and left, but she had only taken a few steps when she suddenly looked at the old man. "You don't know who he is?" The old man was shocked. "Clan leader, he is," Dongli Jing said, "young clan leader." With that, she walked off into the distance. Young clan leader. The old man was stunned on the spot. Young clan leader Yi Xian. The only young clan leader of the undead imperial clan that didn't have a surname. He naturally knew about Yi Xian, but he had never seen Yi Xian before. When Yi Xian led the undead imperial clan against the enemy, he was just a small fry. At that time, he wasn't qualified to get close to Yi Xian. Therefore, although he had seen Yi Xian once or twice, he wasn't familiar with Yi Xian. Moreover, Yi Xian had been gone for hundreds of years. Yi Xian glanced at the old man, feeling slightly depressed, but he didn't say anything and left with Dongli Jing. After a short while, the old man suddenly said in a trembling voice, "He's back. Young clan leader is back." In a short while, the entire undead imperial clan knew that Yi Xian had returned. In the undead palace. Many elders of the undead imperial clan were gathered in the palace, including Dongli Zhan, Dongli Ao, and other people that Yi Xian was familiar with. Everyone was looking at Yi Xian, and Yi Xian was slightly embarrassed. Dongli Jing suddenly said, "Where are you?" Yi Xian smiled, "Dao Brink." Higashi Kei looked at Yi Xian. "Dao Brink?" Yi Xian nodded. "It's somewhere very far from here." "Stay a little longer?" Higashi Yasushi asked after a brief moment of silence. Yi Xian said with a smile, "I came here this time to see you, and also to give some gifts to my clansmen." Presents. Hearing this, everyone in the hall laughed. It wasn't because of the gift, but because of the word clansman. Higashi Kei glanced at Yi Xian and nodded slightly. "The gifts aren't that important. Just come back often to visit." Meanwhile, Yi Xian opened his palm, and a few dozen spatial rings flew towards them. When they saw the heavenly supreme crystals in the spatial rings, they couldn't stay calm anymore. Each of the storage rings contained over 10 million heavenly extreme crystals. There were over 100 million of them in Dong Lijing's storage ring. Although the Immortal Emperor clan was very wealthy, since they controlled so many worlds, the heavenly supreme crystals were not ordinary spiritual stones. This kind of divine item could not be produced in a place like the nine-dimensional universe. Even Higashi Yasushi couldn't stay calm anymore. Her intuition told her that the overall strength of the Immortal Emperor clan would undergo an earth-shattering change. Higashi Yasushi looked at Yi Xian. What gifts? Come back more often in the future. It's good to bring some gifts. Yi Xian, inside the hall, everyone was extremely excited. These cultivation resources were enough to change their destiny. At this time, Yi Xian said, I have some things here that should be helpful to everyone. Then, he pointed his finger, and a few dozen white lights disappeared into the space between the eyebrows of everyone in the hall. Inheritance. Among the white lights, there were some cultivation inheritances that he had obtained along the way, which were enough for everyone to cultivate to the heartless state. As for Dongli Jing, Dongli Zhan, and the others, the inheritance that Yi Xian gave them could directly cultivate to the Daoless state. The Daoless state. Even with his help, it would not be easy for Higashi Yasushi and the others to reach the Daoless state. It should be known that Nakayama of Silla and the others had spent at least tens of millions of years to reach the Daoless state. It would be very difficult for Higashi Yasushi and the others to reach the Daoless state, but at least there was hope. After a while, only Yi Xian and Higashi Yasushi were left in the hall. Higashi Yasushi said softly, "Come with me." Then, she walked out of the hall. Yi Xian quickly followed behind Higashi Yasushi. He was very respectful to Higashi Yasushi. When the two of them arrived outside the hall, there were already countless people from the Immortal Emperor clan gathered outside. Until now, the Immortal Emperor clan did not have a prince or young master. Because of Yi Xian. Even though Yi Xian had been gone for hundreds of years, he was still the young master of the Immortal Emperor clan. The very first batch of youngsters from the Undying Imperial clan had all submitted to Yi Xian. That was because Yi Xian had been the number one person of the Undying Imperial clan's younger generation back then. However, as that batch of youngsters grew up, more and more youngsters appeared in the Undying Imperial clan. Many people were unconvinced. Why was an outsider always occupying the position of young master? At this moment, a man suddenly appeared in front of Yi Xian and Higashi Yasushi. The man bowed deeply to Higashi Yasushi. Clan chief. Higashi Yasushi nodded slightly. She looked at Yi Xian, Dongli Yan, the number one expert of the younger generation in the Immortal Emperor clan. Yi Xian was about to speak, but Dongli Yan looked at Yi Xian. I want to challenge you. Challenge you. Very direct. Yi Xian looked at Dongli Yan and smiled. Why? Dongli Yan smiled. You've occupied the position of young master for hundreds of years. I'm not very convinced. Yi Xian came to an understanding. He wanted the position of young master. Yi Xian gazed at Higashi Yasushi. She didn't speak. Yi Xian thought for a moment, and then he smiled. Let's fight if you're not convinced. A smile appeared on Higashi Yasushi's face. Actually, she really cared about Yi Xian's attitude. Did Yi Xian admit that he was from the Immortal Emperor clan? Obviously, Yi Xian had always considered himself to be from the Immortal Emperor clan. With this heart, it was enough. All the members of the Immortal Emperor clan seethed with excitement when they heard Yi Xian's words. Fight! Countless members of the Immortal Emperor clan roared in unison. The Immortal Emperor clan didn't lack backbone and hot-bloodedness. Dongli Yan, who stood opposite Yi Xian, smiled. Shall we go somewhere else? Yi Xian smiled. There's no need for that. Take a strike from me. If you can withstand it, then the position of young master will be yours. Dongli Yan's eyes narrowed slightly. Confidence is a good thing, but if you're conceited. Yi Xian roared with laughter. I'm going to attack. Dongli Yan gazed at Yi Xian. I'm ready. Hiss. Dongli Yan's voice had just resounded when a sword was pressed against the center of his forehead. The sword pierced half an inch into his forehead, and a drop of blood flowed down the tip of the sword and onto the bridge of his nose. The surroundings fell deathly silent. I lost? I lost just like that? Dongli Yan's eyes were filled with confusion, and he seemed as if he'd lost his soul. He'd never underestimated Yi Xian. Because while he hadn't met Yi Xian, he'd heard of Yi Xian's legends. He knew that Yi Xian was very strong, and he'd prepared his ultimate move. However, he'd never imagined that Yi Xian would actually be strong to such an extent. Yi Xian turned around to look at Dongli Jing and smiled. "Patriarch, let's go." Dongli Jing nodded lightly, and then he walked towards the distance. Yi Xian opened his palm, and the azure profound sword returned to his hand. He followed Dongli Jing and walked towards the distance. Meanwhile, Dongli Yan suddenly said, "I'm convinced." Yi Xian roared with laughter, and then he opened his palm. A strand of sword light flew out from his palm, and then it descended firmly onto the square. The others were slightly puzzled. Meanwhile, Yi Xian's voice sounded out from afar, "From today onward, anyone who shatters this strand of sword light of mine will be the next young master of the Immortal Emperor clan." Everyone. From that moment onward, Yi Xian's strand of sword light had existed on the square for 30 million years. In these 30 million years, no one from the Immortal Emperor clan had been able to break through this strand of sword light. Because the stronger Yi Xian was, the stronger the strand of sword light was. This strand of sword light contained a strand of his sword intent. In these 30 million years, there were many new patriarchs in the Immortal Emperor clan. However, there was always only one young master, and that was Yi Xian. Because no one had been able to break through the strand of sword light that Yi Xian had left behind. This strand of sword light had caused countless monstrous geniuses of the Immortal Emperor clan to despair. Until one day, 30 million years later, a young man came to the Immortal Emperor clan. Yi Xian and Dongli Jing walked to a garden, and Dongli Jing said softly, "You're very strong now, so strong that the entire Immortal Emperor clan combined isn't as strong as you." She couldn't see through the current Yi Xian. Yi Xian's growth during this period of time after he had gone out was really terrifying. Yi Xian smiled and said, "No matter how much I grow in the future, I will always be a member of the Immortal Emperor clan." Dongli Jing looked at Yi Xian and smiled. "This will always be your home." Yi Xian smiled and said, "I know." Dongli Jing was silent for a moment, then asked, "Where's your mother?" "Mother." Yi Xian was silent. "Dongli Nan." After a moment, Yi Xian said, "She left with Dad. I don't know where Dad is now. I've been chasing after him and Qing, but I don't know if I can keep up with them." Dongli Jing said, "Definitely." Yi Xian was confused. "Why?" Dongli Jing looked at Yi Xian and said, "Because they're waiting for you." Yi Xian. The two continued forward. After a moment, Dongli Jing stopped and said softly, "Let's go." Yi Xian looked at Dongli Jing. Dongli Jing smiled and said, "Come back often." Yi Xian smiled and said, "Definitely. Patriarch, you take care." As he spoke, he flashed up and transformed into a ray of light that vanished into the horizon. After Yi Xian left, Dongli Zhan appeared next to Dongli Jing and looked at the horizon. "Gone?" Dongli Jing nodded. Dongli Zhan said in a deep voice, "The crystals he left behind are very precious." Dongli Jing smiled and said, "Precious to what extent?" Dongli Zhan hesitated and said, "To change all of our fates." Dongli Jing was silent. Dongli Zhan said softly, "Dongli Yan, that little guy, was shocked." Not only him, but all the other little guys were shocked. Dongli Jing smiled and said, "It's not a bad thing." Dongli Zhan laughed and said, "Indeed." These young people of the Immortal Emperor clan had no natural enemies in the entire 9 dimensions. It was not a bad thing to be shocked this time. Dongli Jing looked at the horizon and said softly, "Young man, I wish you all the best. P.S. I wish you all the votes." You're tuning into the Biyao's Wuxia Chronicles YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.